actively enjoying a top-tier title, the lad abruptly finds himself teleported into the digital code. Consciousness returns within the physical vessel belonging to a random, nameless background persona, plus observing his own reflection triggers uncontrollable weeping and total misery. Basically, the fellow landed inside the vessel of Vandishitan, the ultimate cosmic punching bag, a pathetic minor caste member destined to bite the dust regardless of his choices. Having attempted to rescue even for decades, every potential strategy failed miserably. This boy perished in every creative fashion the universe could possibly cook up. One instance saw him flattened by a gargantuan beast. Another occasion involved him slurping toxin and promptly expiring. Once he tripped and exited this world forever, during a distinct time frame. One housemaid perforated the fellow following their very messy and dramatic romantic split. Then a whole squad of scorned ladies attempted murder over emotional bruises. Furthermore, the boy expired while shielding the lead hero throughout the ultimate showdown. That specific run represented his record for not being dead, so a tiny glimmer of optimism exists that perhaps this attempt avoids tragedy. Yet a massive mystery remains regarding where to start. So his primary mission involves discovering secrets to being a background guy who breathes. High-ranking warriors practice sword techniques until their hands literally fall off, plus sorcerers concentrate on flinging flashy magic at their problems. Our hero concludes the solution is basic. Just increase those statistics. As ranks increase, spellcasters gain extra energy to fuel their mystical fireworks, whereas brawlers grow sturdier, nippier, and significantly more annoying for enemies to defeat. Hearing this, Mabel questions whether the lad already plans a suicidal field trip inside a cavern. Mabel shrieks toward the boy while he pretends everything is normal. The woman lectures him sternly, insisting that joking about dungeons is forbidden, because they are crawling with nightmare fuel. Membership in high society requires exploring one later as a matured adult, so the woman demands he perform drills and gains strength, confirming that zero wandering happens under her vigilant watch. The lad pacifies her using agreements until the lady eggs. The fellow actually voiced his thoughts quite loudly on purpose, simply to gauge her predictably fiery response. Honestly, Arlie has inhabited this realm for nearly a decade, and he realizes everyone here is suffering from a massive collective delusion. They incorrectly assume that the sole method for growth involves walking into monster-infested basements. Despite containing a kernel of undeniable accuracy, the premise has flaws. Clearing out those dangerous subterranean levels truly grants special boons to make people exponentially more powerful. The kingdom eventually asserted authority, appointing nobles to oversee these challenges and resulting in the construction of a bustling dungeon city, currently managed by none other than his father, Marquis Celine de Chiton. It is entirely accurate that successfully navigating dungeons will raise a person's level significantly. However, even possesses insider knowledge regarding alternative methods for achieving true strength, particularly if he applies the specific techniques he learned from his past gaming experience. Mabel catches his words and curiously puzzles over exactly what he is implying. He responds with a gentle smile and reassures her that there is no need for concern. He fully comprehends that, within the scope of demon war, he is typically viewed as a relatively minor character, yet the reality remains that he possesses one of the most charming personalities in the entire cast. He admits, with a touch of melancholy, that his smiling days might be limited since he understands exactly what catastrophe approaches. That seemingly innocuous expression of joy could actually cause significant complications further down the timeline. A simple, carefree grin might actually attract peril, and he absolutely refuses to activate any potential death flags. Pushing aside those worrying thoughts, he directs his attention toward practical matters. Even has just confirmed local perceptions of demons, so now he must figure out how to survive. The first crucial step in his immortality project is leveling up. Consequently, he turns to Mabel and inquires about the precise date of his upcoming birthday celebration. She responds with the information that the big day is rapidly approaching, specifically next week. He subsequently instructs her to inform his father that he urgently requires a meeting before that date, explaining that he simply cannot delay further. To properly execute his strategy, he absolutely needs a specific item currently held by the Marquis, specifically, the elusive Mirasol's necklace. This particular item was actually the very first artifact found inside the Sheridan dungeon, and it became a permanent heirloom for their family line. Within the context of the game, the singular method for acquiring this necklace was entering into a binding pact with even himself. The real issue, however, centers on a particular event required to activate it, an event he recalls in minute detail. When our protagonist attempted to activate the Mirasol's necklace, he infused it with mana and cast the proper spell, which is precisely when the whole situation drastically went sideways. Without warning, thousands of gelatinous slimes instantaneously materialized, and completely inundated the surrounding area. While they were individually level 1 slimes, he possessed absolutely no knowledge regarding how to prevent their continuous appearance. He fought off the gelatinous horde as long as possible, but ultimately failed. The memorable scene where Evan was completely swallowed by the endless tide of slimes subsequently became one of the most infamous events recorded in the game's history. In that precise moment of panic, he observed something extremely critical and valuable. When he was operating the main character during gameplay, he successfully eliminated one of those particular slimes in an effort to protect Evan. Then the virtual interface flashed a quick alert saying he acquired a solitary glob of XP. Right then, he figured out those wobbly slimes popped from his jewelry actually drop sweet juicy stats. This is not that typical floor climbing grind. These XP points beef up a person's fundamental cosmic soul essence. Within digital realms, every blink or sneeze generates a result, and nerds usually label this phenomenon the classic gamer grind. If folks bash goblins or just sweat in gems, they stack progress by doing the same boring stuff repeatedly. Locals assume they are just honing crafts, which is totally wrong, since they are actually ascending their mortal coils to a higher plane of being through repetitive labor, rather than just getting slightly better at swinging tools. Back when young Evan was a basement-dwelling gamer, he spotted this specific core. Besides standard dungeon progression, he watched his soul stats climb, which he knew was a viable strategy. Even though these soul levels crawl along like snails, and usually rely on whether a person was born with a brain or some muscles. However, soul levels possess a crazy secret, because they have no ceiling, making them way cooler than basic dungeon ranks. Suddenly, Mabel walks in and ruins his deep philosophical daydreaming session. She chirps that his old man is ready, and the head mate is coming to drag him away. By grinding like a madman, our hero successfully milked the system for points, so even a total wimp could buff up by simply abusing the laborer title to inflate their base existence stats. Obviously, entering a dungeon now would end in a bloody mess where he gets chopped like onions, since usually laborers hunt for gains. But this toddler is currently too small for such reckless adventures, yet he ponders if some pathetic monsters exist that a baby could slap, and then considers conjuring some wimpy slimes just to bully them for easy experience point. That Mirasol trinket burns a single magic point to spawn one level 1 slime, while standard fresh characters usually pack 100 health and magic points. Based on those numbers, Evan can pop out roughly 100 slimes, even if those bouncy dudes give almost zero progress. However, the lad believes the grind is manageable if his training begins immediately. The pair reaches the Marquis' private office. Once they get the green light, the boy waltzes inside. The youngest boy understands his duties as the Marquis' second spawn, and plans to act like a perfect angel to snag Mirasol's specific jewelry. The lad informs his papa he desires that birthday loot way before the scheduled party. The noble asks about his haste, so Evan insists he spotted a pendant before and must own it. The father is stunned, since he didn't think his boy would ask for bling instead of a sharp blade or a puppy. Once he hears the boy wants that specific Mirasol pendant, the man looks totally rattled. The Marquis explains this pendant is a legendary family heirloom, meaning he cannot simply give it away for no reason. Our hero activates his ultimate ability, utilizing those pathetic and adorable begging eyes. This clever strategy successfully crumbles the noble's resolve. He weighs his child's desperate plea against the fact that, while the jewelry seems useless, it remains a holy family artifact passed down through ages. Suddenly the lad remembers magical trinkets supposedly pick specific messers, assuming Mirasol's jewelry officially swiped right on his profile. Consequently, the boy eventually acquiesces, opting to offer the shiny pendant as a celebratory gift for his anniversary of birth. At that juncture, the youth lunges forward to embrace his old man. The Marquis cautions the lad, mentioning that human bodies possess a strict capacity for carrying mystical gear without exploding. His father explains that while enchanted rings, blades, or chains exist, a warrior can only handle 5 active items before things get messy. 5 pieces represent the absolute peak of energy that a mortal frame can safely digest. The parent insists that when the youngster eventually upgrades to flashier loot, he must tuck this heirloom back into storage, as it remains sacred ancestral treasure. Our main hero secretly intends to surrender the trinket only after grinding enough experience to reach a respectable power tier, realizing one cannot bully helpless puddles of goo for eternity. The youngster swears an oath to bring the item back later. Currently, the boy frets over monitoring progression, wishing for a floating digital menu to display soul stats and current progress bars. Regardless, he feels quite smug about acquiring the necklace, retreating to private chambers to scrutinize the shiny bauble with intense curiosity. A traumatic flashback strikes, depicting a previous pathetic demise where our protagonist became a light snack for gelatinous monsters. He notes his virtual counterpart blundered by triggering the relic prematurely. causing a magical meltdown that ended in a very messy disaster. However, this version of the character is upgraded, understanding exactly how to tame wild magic, conjure jelly beasts, and avoid pitfalls. He recalls the specific incantation, those very words that previously spelled certain doom, yet remains confident the outcome will change. Our protagonist senses a weirdly intimate bond forming between his own spirit and the cold metal of an ancient heirloom. While directing the shimmering stream of internal energy to concentrate within the palm of a right hand, a tiny glob of translucent jelly materializes right there. Regarding its facade, the blob pounces. The youth realizes these basic tier creatures only provide a minor itch of toxic discomfort rather than lethal doses of venom. He calculates those bouncy blobs only pose a threat if they swarm him like a crowd at a discounted sale. The boy realizes he is a new man while grabbing the squishy monster in his palm and squashes it flat, recalling gaming mechanics. The lead-nose constant bruising leads to a weakened face, enabling a spectacular finishing maneuver that deletes opponents with one dab. Professional gamers typically refer to this devastating killing blow as the ultimate singular strike of absolute finality. As the jelly enters its desperate stage, the fighter executes a lethal technique, flattening the creature into a mere stain on the floor. Following several rounds of squishing, he notes a 10-second kill time, acknowledging a higher tier hero could disintegrate these things with a mere flick. Nonetheless, the protagonist refuses to quit, knowing this monotonous blob bashing eventually accumulates, turning him into a powerhouse through strict daily workout schedules. Surprisingly, this repetitive exercise drains a significant portion of physical endurance and his pool of magical energy. Continuing this relentless grind might snap our 9-year-old newbie hero like a brittle twig. He understands gaming mechanics where pushing boundaries triggers nasty debuffs, knowing that energy levels under 50% cause shivering while dropping below 30 induces massive cold sweats. Based on his internal wiki, he suspects staying above that 30% threshold ensures survival, so he meticulously balances his magical reserves and physical energy throughout his grind. Following some practice, he begins turning those jelly monsters into puddles with newfound speed. This efficiency makes him speculate whether his existence rank actually increased recently. However, he doubts gaining levels should feel this easy in reality. Lacking floating holographic menus or clear notifications makes confirming his progress a frustrating guessing game. He ponders whether this mindless repetition satisfies hidden unlock requirements for secret ability, then suddenly acquires a talent that he assumes involves his constant fist clenching, perhaps some bizarre grip-related power. Even if finding secrets like that feels suspiciously like cheating, he also observes a weird cardiac compression whenever his magic energy drains. Although his physical vigor lacks clear warning signs, he remains convinced that spamming these gelatinous monsters definitely places a massive, invisible burden on his underdeveloped cardiovascular system. The lad begins pondering whether Ivan, possessing minor character status, actually inherited superior lung capacity instead of raw sorcery, possibly being the primary reason why total fatigue has not yet dragged him into tiredness. A sharp epiphany strikes, because he remembers Ivan was originally a squishy magic user, meaning this high physical durability makes absolutely no logical sense whatsoever. Externally, past the door, Mibble catches some suspicious noises and frantically barges inside to ensure he is safe. The kid promises that everything is totally functional and suggests she return in a few hours. Once she departs, our hero loudly insults the incompetent developers. Though he never plans on kicking the bucket so easily, he resolves to engineer a rigorous training calendar designed to transform his noodle arms. He reckons that mixing jelly slaying sessions with Gim science will produce a terrifyingly effective warrior. Furthermore, he intends to draft a massive tome detailing every complicated aspect of this reality, contrasting the basic version previously drafted. For this attempt, he intends to document creation myths, royal bloodlines, messy political scandals, and the precise coordinates of every single shiny treasure chest hidden across the digital landscape, plus juicy personal secrets regarding every significant individual currently breathing air within these borders. Having finished the title frequently, those specific facts remain sharp inside his mind. He aims to exploit every meta spoiler to dodge disasters while staying 5 steps ahead. Still, he acknowledges that real life often enjoys tossing curveballs that the developers ignored. Monitoring every deviation from the plot is his top priority because he needs to spot the glitches in reality, which remains his only prayer for anticipating the chaos ahead. His internal alarm bells are screaming since a potential disaster might be lurking right under his roof, forcing him to sneak around like a cat on a hot tin roof. His actions currently focus entirely on not dying. The kid finally drafted a workout regimen designed to turn his noodle arms into something slightly more intimidating, aiming for peak physical condition. Mixing video game logic with his own private survival guide, even crafted a master plan, and immediately dove into his drills to avoid becoming a tragic footnote. Mabel spins around to gossip with the crew, questioning if anyone else thinks the tiny boss has started acting like a completely different person recently. She highlights his new habit of barricading himself inside his bedroom, strictly forbidding anyone from disturbing his mysterious and likely very intense brooding sessions. A fellow housemate observes her coworker getting a bit too worked up, advising her to keep her cool before she accidentally talks herself out of a paycheck. The kitchen lad reminds her that while being friendly is cute, getting too cozy with the boss usually ends with a pink slip and no severance. Another staffer chimes in to confirm that she also senses a very weird vibe lately. Their little troublemaker, who previously treated the mansion like his personal prank playground, has gone suspiciously silent, leaving the estate eerie and peaceful for once. Then the lad recounts spotting the master in the garden looking like a confused flamingo, striking odd poses that vaguely resembled some sort of rhythmic gymnastics. The maid remembers seeing him obsessively flexing his hands, while the boy figures it is just one of those bizarre juvenile habits that confuse every adult. Poor Mabel remains a nervous wreck, utterly certain that Ivan traded his personality for something else the moment he recovered from that fever. Her coworker tries to quiet her. Meanwhile, the boy cautions that her dramatics might get her fired if she doesn't pipe down, but his warning is interrupted. A frantic staff member suddenly crashes through the dining room doors while the group is busy gossiping. He is wheezing heavily. He gasps out the news that their tiny lord just pressed a literal rock from the flower beds. The skeptical boy scoffs and suggests that the messenger is probably hallucinating. The frantic guy doubles down, swearing the rock was too heavy for a child even if it was small, especially since the master called it a dumbbell, a word the unfortunate fellow can barely utter. Upon hearing the crazy news, Mabel tries to sprint toward the garden to check on her little master. Her friend manages to snag her arm, preventing her from running off like a headless chicken. The boy asks the messenger one more time if he is seeing spirits, but the man swears on his life that the feat actually occurred. Mabel wiggles like a fish on a hook, yet her colleague refuses to release her grip. Ivan is currently visiting his mother, Reading D. As the former first lady of the Shitun household, she relaxes while enjoying a cup of hot tea. She scolds her child quite gently. She asks what on earth has been occupying his schedule so much that he forgot his dear mother likes her afternoon tea with a side of conversation. He claims he is just studying ancient junk and doing squats, and she immediately guesses he is talking about that legendary soul necklace his dad gave him. Mom feels quite bewildered by his fitness routine, considering she figured he was destined for mystical wizardry instead. The lad insists that every soul possesses a unique calling, and forcing an awkward mismatch creates a buffet of sadness for both performers and spectators alike. She allows him total freedom for now, given that his schedule will soon explode into a chaotic mess once the next year arrives. Right then, the small aristocrat realizes that stuffy high society training officially commences at the ripe old age of 10. Within 12 months, he faces a mountain of subjects including aristocratic heritage, various tomes, complex arithmetic, and global maps, as well as blade dancing and mystical arts plus every other essential skill a proper fancy lad requires. Mother mentions that being a Sheridan in this monster-infested burg carries weight, meaning he must eventually assist his elder sibling in running the family's chaotic empire. He gathers she means he must brave the dark pits once he grows up, which shocks her because he already seems to know the family secrets. Naturally, the boy is well aware, mostly because that exact situation caused his previous pixelated demise during his past life as a gamer. He vows to hit the books like a scholar later, but she suggests he plays around now before his free time vanishes forever. She tells him to go roam the streets, even if the neighborhood looks like a total disaster zone following that recent monster breakout incident. Ivan nods politely while secretly plotting to squish every slime in existence whenever the grown-ups look the other way for 5 minutes. Having 12 months remaining, he intends to dominate his current workout and launch his next grand plan for never-ending life. However, reaching that objective requires finding a specific individual who perfectly fits his weirdly ambitious and slightly terrifying agenda. Returning to his quarters, he examines his cheat sheets, reviewing all those overpowered demigods he met during the game's mid-tier noble questline. He ignores the poison poker and the crimson sorceress despite her gorgeous looks, mainly because their current locations are a total mystery to him. Suddenly, his vision focuses on the legendary Mute Warrior, a mythical powerhouse whose stats essentially shattered this digital realm, much like our main star. He remembers how the Quiet Fighter was a lethal duel blade enthusiast who vanished into darkness and murdered beasts without making a single peep. Unfortunately, the Mute Warrior and his divine pals shared some incredibly miserable destinies. Our protagonist feels certain he can rewrite the Quiet Guy's tragic life script as well. That Slayer first resided inside Shurton's walls, became an orphan after a massive dungeon explosion wrecked his life when he was a mere 9-year-old child. He got shipped off to some overseas sellswords and didn't discover his inner magic until he started crawling through monster pits. While the tiny lord ponders the details of the catastrophic monster eruption, he recalls his mom saying the local area is currently patching itself up after the latest underground jailbreak. This implies the mute warrior, an absolute legend among high-tier characters, is likely wandering around the very streets at this moment. While resolving to locate this mysterious person, he approaches Mabel and declares their immediate departure for a serious spending spree. Seated within the horse-drawn transport, she remains completely baffled. Mabel wonders about his shopping goals, since the streets look like a giant monster food fight occurred recently. The lad casually mentions shopping for a living person, making Mabel lose words. The boy breaks news about visiting the local flesh auction. Sunrise hits a very messy, broken neighborhood. Battered citizens walk slowly while an Moihi wagon rolls down the marketplace path. From inside, Ivan discusses the town's fall, blaming the dungeon break for letting hungry monsters turn the town into their personal chew toy. Mabel mentions that sellers will ghost them until repairs finish, while pest control hunts the remaining beasts. Our lad confesses that browsing for flesh during a crisis is tacky, yet unavoidable. Missing this window means the city gets crowded, making future moves a total pain in the butt. The servant warns that shopping for people while everything is on fire feels like a very weird hobby. The hero chills out and tells her to relax, noting that this certain shop is actually the sole government-approved human dealership around here. The maid doubts any legal standing, yet he swears it is safer than nurseries for rich kids. Our protagonist remembers that the national regime operates every single servant bays are in this universe, and once they open, most customer service complaints just evaporated. Still, some jerks find gaps in the rules, causing subordinates to revolt with proof of their bad bosses, and within that angry crowd is a spicy redhead from the Third War who uses fire, the Blood Witch. He previously bumped into her, and during that specific meeting, he lost his life. Their ride halts in front of massive mansions. Once within, he even marches between a shiny tin man and the female assistant. The armored fellow bellows their entry, while the kid glances back, making sure his oversized bodyguard is actually ready for action. The fellow named Dane pauses, suggesting that fancy rich kids should avoid such sketchy, low-class joints. Our hero clarifies he knows exactly how this cruel society functions. This boy is not sightseeing or flashing money around. He simply wants to locate some necessary allies. The guard suggests the Marquis has extras, but he then wants to pick his own staff like groceries. He thinks back to how every person the big boss picked for him ended up in an early grave. The group steps ahead, stepping into a parlor where a hairless man stares at his solo arrival. Even notes he prefers picking his own help over trusting a stranger. He promptly requests to convene with youngsters his own generation, already grasping they were orphans from that recent terrible event. That gentleman elaborates these kids fortified their determination and essentially pawned themselves off, implying most won't match his specific criteria. However, the youth argues that this very fact signals they possess real drive and are quite industrious workers. Consequently, putting them through rigorous trials is totally superfluous. Rather, he desires someone capable of maturing in tandem with him, staying faithfully by his side to provide personal defense. The smooth, dumb, gentle and readily essence, figuring there's zero need for further debate if that's the final declared position. Following young Ivan's polite direction, he leads them toward a chamber where a small assembly of youngsters patiently waits. The fellow clarifies he deliberately filtered out absolutely anyone under the age of 12 years old. Meanwhile, Ivan meticulously scrutinizes the assembled crowd, as even more juveniles are ushered into the room. His concentration locks onto a youth sporting azure hair, obsidian eyes, and sun-kissed complexion. Recognizing him instantly as the legendary Quiet Knight, his attention then swivels toward a fiery, crimson-haired damsel, recalling her as a top-tier combatant from the third installment of Demon War, infamous for her truly wicked reputation. Day mutters that these potential recruits look rather feeble, and suggests they peruse other options available, but the young master firmly insists, stating outright he absolutely requires the companionship of both individuals. Demigods, those rare individuals supposedly favored by the Almighty, constituted a concept unique solely to the Demon War series. They surfaced abruptly as a fresh subset of humanity, characterized by inherently frail physiques, and notably sluggish physical development. This unfortunate reality consequently convinced many observers that these beings were inherently substandard stuff. Nevertheless, a select few within that lineage managed to ascend to truly astonishing levels of might. The very ones before him represent the pinnacle, the notorious Blood Witch and the Silent Knight, icons of their kind from Demon War lore. These demigods manage to surmount their naturally weak bodily constraints by aggressively mastering the practice of dungeon leveling. When they successfully attained a new tier within a perilous dungeon, they absorbed twice the divine benefits a standard human would receive, with deeper progress yielding exponentially greater rewards, allowing them to reach heights unreachable by mere mortals. Despite this potential, most demigods struggled intensely just to breach the initial levels of any dungeon. Often, the majority perished before even seeing the 5th floor. It truly meant that the vast majority had to be sacrificed, so that the worthy few could reach supreme power, leading even to conclude that everything appears satisfactory now, promising never to let them perish, since they now pledge service to him. The closely shaven gentleman offers a regretful apology, noting the asking price is merely half of what others command, and accepting it might create unnecessary friction with the marquise. Our young hero retorts that he has zero inclination to haggle over their value, and firmly intends on taking both of them away. He even boldly announces his decision to claim both children, having previously instructed the trade overseer to immediately forward any youths matching his precise description, a request the man agreed to keep strictly confidential. With this development secured, he feels quite optimistic about discovering additional promising demigod prospects in the near future. He pivots to face the pair squarely, studying both their expressions with intense scrutiny. He vividly recalls their utterly ruthless drive in the video game, the chilling way they struck without the slightest moment of hesitation. Truly, there was zero available time for these children to pause and grieve the terrible loss of their respective parents. Our main character kindly assures them that he intends to be a non-intrusive companion, merely inquiring about their given names. The crimson-haired girl falters slightly, pondering exactly what his current meaning behind the question might truly be. After hearing the prompt again, she gave a side glance and introduced herself as Bayu, explaining that only her mother was allowed to use the nickname Lua. He acknowledged her name, then quickly expressed his hope that they would soon be close enough for him to skip straight to Lua. The other young man, not to be forgotten, introduced himself as Shine. He recalled meeting Balua when he first arrived at the slave market, confessing that this was the very first time he had actually heard her name. Ivan recognized the name Shine, noting the deep irony of it when contrasted with his silent night in game character concept. He presented himself as Ivan D, or Sheetan, then generously extended an invitation for the two new acquaintances to get along with him. Shine hesitated slightly, then raised his hand to request permission to ask a question. He wanted to know why Ivan had wasted money buying defective products like them, to which the Marquis' son retorted that Shine should know the answer if he was truly his peer. Shine pressed further, questioning if he had purchased them simply to mock and play with their feelings. Ivan fell quiet, letting his gaze drift between the pair, a signal that the fun part was over. He began to speak of the unfairness inherent in the world, directing his comments primarily towards Shine. The young man admitted that he comprehended the harsh nature of reality. Ivan reminisced about his own good fortune, having been born as a Marquis' second son, which allowed him to live a life of carefree happiness and comfort. He added that it would be shocking if someone like them were to receive such fortune, which prompted Shine to admit his own upbringing was full of hardship and poverty. He confessed that his body was weak and worthless, then demanded to know what kind of blessing Ivan could possibly be referring to. The protagonist replied that the blessing was talent, specifically an overwhelming level of talent that both Shine and Baloo possess. Shine accused him of playing games, but Ivan countered that ignoring him for the moment might make them temporarily feel better, as he followed up by asking if they would truly ever be satisfied. Baloo then asked what talent exactly he was talking about, and inquired if she also shared in this supposed idea. Ivan confirmed that both individuals possessed this talent, which was specifically the ability to become stronger. Baloo remembered a time when her mother apologized for having given birth to someone as weak as her. Shine expressed understanding, noting that his mother had felt exactly the same way about him. Our protagonist dismissed the mother's pity, explaining that their talent was simply difficult to recognize immediately. Shine pressed further, asking how Ivan knew about it when even their own parents were unaware. Ivan responded by revealing that he himself possessed a different kind of talent. Our young man claimed his specific talent was identifying geniuses like the two standing before him. The young girl quickly reached out and grabbed his sleeve, asking if there was truly a chance for her to grow stronger, and he simply answered that she absolutely could. The lad claims proof is coming if they endure his bossy whims for 3 whole years, promising a grand reveal after that lengthy prep. If the pair feels unhappy, departing is allowed, yet staying ensures the master smites anyone acting rude. Shine whines, stating their career choice is strictly limited to being property. Instead, the lad gambles his noble status, requiring absolute loyalty should he fulfill those wild claims. Baloo confesses he is definitely not a charity worker, admitting he hauled them here solely to exploit their potential. Mr. Ivan requests a final decision, asking if the duo will gamble their destinies on his strange offer. Chained in a quiet dungeon, the lad vows to avoid a pathetic demise, while the last nods along with equal stubbornness. Master Eve inquires if the duo will bet their entire existence on a mere toddler. The tiny duo sits quietly, until the lad bows, deciding to believe in this strange master despite a lack of snacks. The lad remembers his parents constantly saying sorry for being pathetic, a truly depressing bedtime story. He vows that within 3 years, the duo shall appreciate their ancestors for those spicy, courageous genes. The last starts leaking from her eyeballs while the small fry grab him like Velcro. The bossy maid catches them and screams for backup like she found a spider. She demands the grubby runts get scrubbed down and inspected for contraband. Outdoors, the steward wonders how the tiny lord plans to exploit his new minions. The lad coolly mentions they shall just be his fancy helpers during this phase. Eventually he will drag them into terrifying monster pits to get chewed on. Steward Dane doubts this logic, yet the small master already committed to his reckless future. The man marvels that someone so small convinced the pair using highly professional manipulation. The servant begins lecturing about youth before the master interjects, claiming his statement contained zero falsehoods. Extreme power is guaranteed, and after 3 cycles the man shall witness their incredible evolution. The guy agrees to follow, suggesting they head indoors while he readies the tiny recruits for their new chores. Afterwards, the master says hello, but the other boy remains completely mute. The orphan eventually chatters, remembering the earlier deal regarding a payment if they demonstrated high skill levels. The boy puzzles over their roles, questioning if they are just glorified room cleaners forever. The pin-sized boss explains he solely requires a single favor from the duo, serving as his miniature muscle squad. The pair echo his demand, so the noble gestures at his chest to confirm. The lad argues they are tiny humans, but our hero promises they will soon possess massive muscles. He demands they utilize those feature muscles to keep his own skin safe. Those two basically become his permanent shadow puppets, sticking like glue minuscule hours, shielding him from any clumsy mishaps. The edgy kid wonders if some massive disaster is lurking around the corner just waiting to jump out. Praising the boy for having a brain, he admits trouble is definitely brewing, making their presence absolutely non-negotiable. The small lad starts pondering his destiny quite loudly, since the mini-boss clarifies this workout routine is top secret, strictly for their eyes only. No paparazzi allowed. That female mentions wanting a go, so the master identifies her using her specific title, promising her she will eventually pulverize beasts that make these look like adorable little fuzzy kittens. Now that he spilled his guts, he invites them to disclose their own deep, dark desire or shopping lists. Both kids mimic his phrasing once again. This kid explains that keeping him alive means he is legally bound to satisfy their every whim, announcing his status as the Marquis runner-up successor. That wealthy brat claims the sky is the limit, even when requesting piles of shiny gold. Grand titles or total liberty are available, so the master begs for a reveal of their hidden desires. Mimicking the leader with intense vibes, the kid announces his ultimate goal is to go on a killing spree. Every single beast. The kid screams his plan to erase every foul creature from existence like a furious vacuum. This tiny demigod likely swapped bedtime stories for beast, dating manifestos during his toddler years. Back in the digital world, he was already a furnace of pure rage directed at those ugly creatures. Meanwhile, the shadow locks eyes with his boss, who promises to make those violent dreams a reality. It is non-negotiable, he claims, because leveling up requires diving headfirst into those creepy, dark monster pits. The lad falters, expressing a massive terror of perishing since those current skills are totally pathetic. The leader's voice stays cocky while promising that following orders perfectly ensures nobody ends up as worm food. The lad remains quiet. However, if this journey lets him wreck those beasts, he will bet his entire life on the venture. The boss nods immediately, telling him to go nuts, while the boy gives a solid thumbs up. Then the little noble pivots to Bellew, wondering what her own personal agenda looks like. During those digital days, this female represented a lethal threat against mankind. Not a beast or a fiend, but a magic user who blocked progress until users eventually assassinated her. The master puzzles over how such a tiny lady could evolve into a world-ending menace intent on burning everything down. The girl confesses having zero clues, clarifying her fondness for not freezing, starving, or generally ceasing to exist anytime soon. She confesses a desire for power, though finding any other life goals is like finding needles in haystacks. With a tender motion, the boy lifts his palm to offer solace. The lad whispers her title, while clutching her small fingers reassuringly, pointing out her tender age of 7. He insists ignorance is bliss, and definitely not her blunder. Regardless of the mysterious solutions, he promises they will tackle the learning process as a duo. The girl nods, committing to the hunt for her own elusive purpose in this world. Our protagonist unveils a unique training regime, admitting that anticipating instant success is foolish since demigods gain experience points quite sluggishly. Their growth is turtle haste compared to mortals, yet he has already mapped out their complicated future. The youth understands that abilities are the secret sauce for demigod development, so they will begin practicing immediately without overthinking complicated categories. Because the primary goal involves getting B5 via skill mastery, as certain abilities provide immediate power boosts. These bonuses instantly boost stamina and magic reserves once the core concepts are finally understood. Those traits offer permanent buffs to various actions, much like the legendary bladesmanship techniques utilized by elite Shurden warriors to enhance their combat prowess. Those methods sharpened both steel and muscle, prompting our hero to hope their current lifting transforms into a comparable talent, sparking interest in the kids. The small pair tilts forward, questioning the effectiveness of such talents, while Aven clarifies that multiple avenues lead to achieving true power. Acquiring talents requires focus on two specific strategies, starting with mindless repetition until the body remembers the motion. Once a move becomes a personal asset, that subsequent route involves joining a prestigious organization for further education. Studying their secrets for decades is key, so they will utilize both tactics to get ahead in this game. War era attendants possessed massive energy, because aristocrats gifted them secret family techniques, elevating their social standing significantly. He further explains, mentioning that prestigious lineages own the most broken abilities. The duo listens with their ears perked up in awe. They are quite fortunate, because the Shurden Marquisate possesses elite traditional talents, which serve as the premier standard across the entire realm. The pair questions their eligibility for such training, and Ivan confirms it while warning that mastery is grueling. Success won't come easy since their current stats are abysmal, meaning they must grind much harder than any normal butler. Matching the others requires surviving the grind, but doing so will construct a very sturdy base for their futures. Developing massive lung capacity and magic pools ensures they can finally beat those pesky dungeons without dying horribly. In conclusion, the lad notes he can only highlight the gateway, whereas they must trek the distance personally. As Balua ponders whether they are actually capable of trekking down this grueling and difficult road, that youth feels absolute certainty, believing their honesty and loyalty are sufficient. The duo concurs, while remaining upright in front of their youthful employer. Our protagonist observes his two students, inquiring about their condition and their readiness for the upcoming trek. That lad swears he is ready while the lass offers silent approval. Both palms collide with Noi. Suddenly a golden-haired servant pops up, likely dreading another one of his legendary toddler tantrums. The small lord shouts that he is surely not belly-ishing, instead requesting a small professional miracle at this moment. His finger aims at that duo, as he queries if she might educate those two personally. That servant repeats his plea in shock, doubting if such an odd request was truly intended. The kid starts explaining why his intel concerning those toddlers is actually quite vital. Basically, these two are fated to remain his devoted partners until eternity. The boy begs for mercy, confessing they are just fragile noodles who actually possess a secret spark of brilliance. The lady consents, vowing to instruct the girl personally while letting the lead servant handle the boy's education, suggesting that such a harsh method will fix the master too. Eventually, that kid questions if the lead servant is a nightmare or just cranky, but before any reply, a looming shadow starts drifting toward them, wondering if the little boss summoned him. Our protagonist realizes he might use his precious features once more to fool the senior into guarding Shine. Throwing away every bit of personal honor, the boy squeaks a plea toward the servant while grinning falsely. Simultaneously, the lad envisions vivid memories of scorched structures and folk yelling. A voice yells for his quick escape, while he recalls promising to live just to smite those beasts. A loud bark jolts him back, demanding he stop daydreaming on the job. A servant is currently hollering for more concentration, releasing a loud shout reminiscent of a rabid hound, barking that he should stop acting like a wet paper towel after minutes of exercise, fearing he will fail every servant duty. That fellow then rushes onward, preaching to the youth that endurance is vital for anyone serving the famous Shurden lineage correctly. The man cautions that dull academic studies follow immediately. Thus the boy needs to conserve his strength. Before that official offers a brief 10-minute intermission. That employee says that observing maturation is comical. Then Ivan arrives to concur regarding the awful cardio, while highlighting the youth's diverse skills, possessing excellent instincts for his years, keen wisdom, plus an unyielding grit to finish every task. He resolves to ramp up the agony, promising he has plenty of magical band-aids for any broken bones. Suddenly, an attendant arrives to say the big patriarch demands a chat. Hence the little boss obeys and walks inside. From inside the study, the Marquis expressed genuine concern that the boy hadn't stepped outside in recent memory. The young fellow quickly explained that he was thoroughly occupied experimenting to understand the necklace's hidden powers. The Marquis listened attentively, cautioning him to avoid accidentally blowing himself up during the process. The Marquis then revealed that the artifact was a growth type, designed to strengthen alongside its chosen user. He elaborated that specific requirements must be met for it to gain new abilities, admitting he hadn't known this until the necklace accepted its owner. Now he pointed to the jewel for the boy to see, asking even if he noticed the soft green luminescence radiating from the center. He clarified that once the entire ornamentation achieved a complete glow, the artifact would level up, and since it was already demonstrating activity, the process wouldn't be prolonged. Our protagonist recalled that no one in the source game ever bothered with this necklace, so he never considered its potential for growth. He started wondering if leveling up would also make his slimes tougher, worrying about them potentially becoming too strong for his bare fists. Dying to a slime would be the height of humiliation, yet he absolutely couldn't bring himself to stop training against them. He ultimately dismissed his anxieties, concluding that a leveled up slime was still, fundamentally, just a slime. Afterward, the Marquis brought up Evan's extensive recent spending on new servants. He asked if the decision was based on simple charity. Evan promptly replied that his choice was actually driven by absolute foresight. He fully believed those two would develop powerful skills and protect him, which is why he assigned them to the head butler and head maid for training. The Marquis accepted Evan's conviction, but firmly warned him that the new staff were solely his responsibility, not the household. Evan readily agreed, declaring with determination that those two were already part of his inner circle. A full 3 months quickly sped by. Shine stood proudly in a new servant's uniform, facing his young master for inspection, while Balua was similarly presented in her maid attire. Evan meticulously inspected them under the watchful gaze of the head butler. He commented that while their overall state wasn't flawless, their stamina was now comparable to the others. The young master questioned exactly how hard they had been pushed during training. He recalled that newcomers unfamiliar with internal energy are typically weak, and require roughly 3 years to properly adapt. While these two had somehow achieved that level in only 3 months, he stated firmly that if they failed, the fault would lie entirely with him, not them. The girl added that she had put forth tremendous effort to succeed. The butler then suggested they reduce training to half a day, and dedicate the rest of their time to serving the young master. Evan agreed, explaining that keeping them nearby was precisely his calculated intention from the very beginning. He hinted at another grand scheme he had brewing, prompting his butler to promise immediate preparations for whatever madness was required. Soon afterward, a very large box was delivered to the area. The young noble unveiled a decorated book, declaring it a unique advantage that only he possessed. As he opened the container, he decided that the very first items they required were twin daggers for Shine, and a specific lamp for Balua's use. Shine eagerly grabbed the pair of golden twin daggers, while Balua held the peculiar lamp. Evan explained that these were powerful artifacts, far from ordinary tools. He recalled how these items were tragically undervalued in the original game, but understood their massive true potential. To demonstrate their power, he suddenly dashed forward, spinning into rapid arcs with the daggers. The blades carved through the air, completely obliterating a thick tree trunk beneath their force. He then asked if Shine had managed to memorize the precise sequence. Shine enthusiastically replied that he had. Shine immediately recognized it as the fastest way to learn twin dagger skills. Eva explained that the technique was called beehive felling, which began by crossing the blades to block. The young master demonstrated the proper form by crossing the blades to guard, bending his knees as the swing flowed downward. He stressed the importance of perfect timing, because the motion needed to be cancelled midway to avoid any wasted effort. Shine quickly mimicked the movement, and even clarified that cancelling meant stopping the action mid-command for faster repetition. Even simply requested that Shine trust him completely, and replicate his lead. Shine nodded, tightening his grip on both daggers. He matched the rhythm, drilling the sequence relentlessly until his footwork sharpened, and the arcs snapped clean, maintaining the stance as he mastered the twin dagger basics within a single day. Meanwhile, Balua was assigned to work indoors with the lamp while Ivan observed her progress. He explained that the lamp could be used to train the mana capacity control skill through constant activation. He added that since mana capacity control was the absolute most critical skill for a mage to develop, continual use of the lamp made it possible to both efficiently learn and improve the skill simultaneously. Spell incantation speed, overall spell force, mana recovery rate, and total mana capacity were all significantly influenced by it. On top of that, every time the lamp was activated, it provided a slight, limitless increase in fire affinity. This meant that as her familiarity with flames grew, her ability to wield fiercer fires would follow, making this the ideal training tool for her. Feeling competitive with Shine's progress, decided to turn it on immediately, but she was interrupted by Reedon's abrupt arrival. Reedon questioned the lamp's presence, causing Balua to quickly address her as Madam. Reed commented that the item was an antique and absolutely should not have been removed from the storehouse. She suddenly realized BunRv was the child Evan had brought in, wondering if he had given this valuable item to her. The young woman carefully explained that he had given her a mysterious artifact, insisting it would miraculously improve her control over Manhwa. Reed nodded slowly in response, processing the strange explanation. He mused that our protagonist had assigned a ridiculously difficult item for teaching basic magical principles. This was especially funny since the boy had zero talent for magic himself, though BunRv immediately jumped to his defense, declaring he was perfectly talented. Reed then graciously offered to help with her curriculum, humorously rebranding it witch training. He instructed her to keep this secret from Evan, probably to avoid hurting the boy's feelings. After all that, the second stage of specialized practice went smoothly, as BunRv repeatedly activated the magic lamp, rapidly boosting her overall mana capacity and proficiency. Shine also kept refining his twin dagger techniques, practicing by canceling the high-level behive feller maneuver exactly halfway through the movement. During this period, the protagonist successfully managed to summon slimes in both hands simultaneously. This proved he had finally mastered controlling two of them at the same time. He held Mirasol's necklace, reflecting on his long-term plan to remove it once he reached a specific existence level. Our hero realized the necklace was a growth-type artifact, causing the slimes he summoned to actually get stronger as he did. This meant they were much tougher to defeat, but provided significantly more experience points, presenting a valuable new opportunity. He promptly decided that his current goal was not to acquire another item, but to obtain a new skill. With this new objective in mind, Evan began Immortality Project number 3 by summoning slimes with both hands. Evan launched into Immortality Project number 3, which focused on acquiring complete immunity to all poisons. His goal was to develop a tolerance so powerful that no toxin could ever threaten his life again. The only issue was the expense, as the necessary poisons were prohibitively costly, requiring the head butler's authorization to access the family funds. Mabel overheard his monologue and asked exactly what he was planning to consume. Evan explained he couldn't grant her request to become his servant in the way she imagined, instead suggesting they form a partnership. Leaving her slightly confused, he quickly cleared up the confusion by revealing the real purpose of his plan to start a new business. Not long after, Eric arrived. Eric walked in and immediately asked what type of favor his younger brother wanted this time around. Evan immediately brought up the city inspection assignment given to Eric by their father, the duty requiring Sheridan Harris to personally walk the city streets to understand leadership. He offered to lend a helping hand with the assignment. Eric agreed, and Evan produced a lengthy paper. Sliding it across the desk, Eric proceeded to closely examine the written notes, wondering if the information was just compiled from second-hand reports. Our boy assured him he had personally reached all the conclusions himself, prompting Eric to acknowledge their impressive accuracy. Eric realized the document meticulously recorded every significant event in the city from the last 6 months, complete with each incident's cause and consequence, besides guessing what junk folks crave, plus fresh stuff, and brainless recipes involving stuff found in the yard. He even clarifies his dream of launching a tiny startup, scanning a weekly stipend, and finally figuring out where the pubs are. Big brother Eric recommends showing the scribbles to dad for permission. Facing an ancient lord, that kid reveals his strategy. Father quickly mentions that the pitch is way too bloated for a tiny shop, and warns the boy is incompetent. The lad retorts that he only wants to focus on one tiny slice. After being grilled, he admits he wants the pharmacy, while dumping all the boring work on his dad. Looking closer, the noble realizes the whole document was a giant trap of info from the start. The man glares suspiciously to see if he is being played, though the boy maintains he is simply displaying courage. The nobleman stares at Eric, wondering if a test is required for this weirdo, while Eric suggests checking if they even share the same crazy mother. The kid aggressively yeets his documents across the wood, shouting that a meeting with the local minions is mandatory. The father replies that it is finally time to grow the side hustle the kid is running. As the underlings gather, several complain that the strategy would look better if they hid the author's name, whereas others claim the actual info is valuable enough alone. A random guy asks why the boy likes pharmacies when they make basically zero profit anyway. The father agrees, remembering the boy's rant about how the medical field is dead, because greedy monks own the magic. Our hero argues that keeping the locals alive is actually the top priority. He mentions the church avoids fixing broken bones without holy magic, mainly to keep their donation boxes overflowing with cash. Consequently, only suicidal adventurers or rich snobs get any real help. Meanwhile, the average Joe just expires in line. He claims that actual drugs are the only way out during emergencies, and should the market mature by mass, producing cheap healing juice, they can slash prices and keep the ghetto residents from dying like flies. so he firmly announces his intent to forge ahead. Our patriarch responds decisively, vowing to gamble his own reputation on the project, and by doing this, those holy pasts will be unable to mess around. The kid stalls, wondering if annoying the national cult is actually a smart move for their safety. However, the patriarch offers comfort, vowing to argue with the emperor himself if he has to, while shouting that they are doing it all for the citizens. The big boss greenlights scaling the enterprise, inventing fresh gizmos, and establishing a neighborhood drugstore. The boy offers a humble bow, yet his internal agenda stays exactly the same: to hoard every toxic plant on Earth and exercise until he is basically immune to death. Once the Marquis nods his approval, hammers start swinging, and the structure pops up like magic. Actual medicine makers are extinct around here since the church nerds hog all the land. Every intrusive nuisance makes the youngsters see, thinking back to that third cataclysmic brawl, where those idiots turned shrubbery hunting into agony, and caves into morgues, effectively mandating that the protagonists study brewing without assistance. He figures if you want something done right, brew the tonics yourself, though selling drugs, as a tiny 9-year-old child might look slightly suspicious until a clever plan strikes. He plans to act as a lowly drugstore apprentice. He will act like a prodigy to gain trust while pulling strings from the shadows, conveniently using legendary formulas he memorized from his gaming days to look like a genius inventor. The servant returns, and the master asks for news, but the boy admits he failed, mentioning that he found a specialized scout to track down talent. An A-headed fellow enters clutching a stack of files. Our hero identifies the local human trafficking boss, who claims plenty of rural herbalists exist in the wilderness before sliding him a document of candidates, suggesting the boy pick his target wisely. Our hero glares at a single interesting candidate. 6-decade-old veteran, Bernard Garcia. He barked an order to drag that specific geezer over immediately. Merely half a wheat, the attendant leads the elder inside, where the grumpy veteran offers a very curt introduction. The hairless broker introduces a helper for the shop, a girl wearing a frilly uniform who says her name is Hannah. The attendant berates the geezer for being rude, but the elder barks right back. Then the young noble mentions his own name. The old-timer suggests he be called Grandpa Bernard. He gives props to the crown-dumbed recruiter for his work before mentioning those mythical offspring while making sure the secret stays absolutely buried. The lad waves goodbye. Bernard, witnessing the unfolding spectacle, couldn't help but ponder if he was merely a babe in swaddling clothes after all. Even finally disclosed his birth year. This announcement invariably sparked uproarious guffaws, before the pharmacist, clearly exasperated, demanded to know his precise intentions. Under considerable pressure, the seasoned pharmacist conceded that offering assistance was an entirely different kettle of fish. He then cited hushed whispers suggesting this youngster possessed alchemical knowledge far exceeding his own comprehension, cautioning that severe repercussions would inevitably follow should such a boast prove baseless. Completely unperturbed, even confidently tabled a proposition. If he could unveil something genuinely novel, then Bernard absolutely had to remain in his company for a minimum of half a decade. Bernard, surprisingly, concurred, yet stipulated, should Ivan somehow fall short, then he, the apprentice, would surrender every last one of his closely guarded arcane secrets. Ivan, brimming with assurance, immediately took up the gauntlet. Their journey concluded at Brothers' Pharmacy, the impressive carriage finally halting before an undeniably magnificent edifice. Ivan, ever the visionary, declared it would soon function as his very own laboratory. Bernard, quite impatiently, demanded an immediate showing of his legendary alchemical prowess. Instead, Ivan's initial detour led them directly into the medicine production chamber, a peculiar space where endless rows of suspiciously vivid, violet flora thrived in specialized incubation units. He then strategically arranged several potion fields nearby, proceeding to elucidate the rather unorthodox technique behind nurturing these healing botanicals. He whimsically labeled it a cheating elixir, owing to its scandalous speed and almost insulting simplicity. Naturally, this miracle brew adhered to certain stringent stipulations, remnants from the bureaucratic aftermath of Demon War. Brandishing the file, even subtly prodded, asking Bernard if this particular brew was familiar. The venerable elder confessed his complete ignorance, sputtering the potion's name again, utterly flabbergasted, while Hannah, equally again, parroted the very same mystified utterance, both utterly floored by the ingenious technique. Even elaborated that uncommon botanicals required extended cultivation periods, and successive applications gradually depleted the potion's potency, necessitating new infusions. Even with these minor inconveniences, this magical concoction permitted a grand, industrial level of herbal cultivation. Bernard, with a palpable sigh of self-pity, lamented that he had been so utterly convinced no novel elixir could possibly emerge. only to have a mere whippersnapper enlighten him with knowledge he genuinely never possessed. With a faint, almost wry grin, he declared his remaining days promised to be rather splendid indeed. Finally, with a flourish that only Ivan could manage, he unveiled a contract not for 5, but a staggering 50 years. Ivan then pressed for BunRv seal. As the surprising magnitude of the commitment fully landed, the old man, with a heavy heart, reached for his writing feather. Subsequently, Ivan faithfully returned to crafting his meticulous manuscript of world-building lore for the legendary Demon War. He diligently maintained his regiment, meticulously revising the expanding cast of heroes and villains. Sometime thereafter, the assembled entourage convened, armed with their precious vials and verdant specimens, awaiting Ivan's supple cue. The clandestine assembly commenced with Ivan detailing their initial, crucial directive, to systematically collect every single healing botanical available within the city limits. Before anything else, he further elaborated that, in due course, their foraging expeditions would gradually encompass a much broader territory. He astutely pointed out that adventurers, ever so disorganized, often generously donated their forgotten, excess herbs. BunRv then shrewdly proposed distributing trial elixirs amongst the various botanical merchants. Ivan, with a nod, swiftly assented. He astutely suggests that producing a significantly cheaper product, one that could be easily stored, would allow for distribution across the entire city. Ivan privately considers that even selling at a low cost will generate profits, since small initial margins will eventually multiply with citywide distribution once the pharmacy expands. BunRv starts sweating nervously, worrying about potential interference with their supply chain, but he immediately calms down when Ivan reminds him that the Marquise family name offers full protection. Meanwhile, since Ivan's schedule doesn't allow daily visits, he assigns Hannah to assist BunRv directly. He next summons Mabel, explaining that he personally finds the act of facing customers utterly exhausting, so she will be elevated to the public face of the business, representing him in all things. When asked if she can truly shoulder such a heavy burden, Mabel falls completely silent for a single, dramatic moment, before declaring that she has been preparing for this responsibility since the very first mention of the idea. She instructs him to leave everything to her, swearing to protect his honor and crush anything that tries to interfere with their operation. Pleased by her determined fervor, he then rewards Mabel by also putting her in charge of herb storage. This new task includes overseeing the collection of every ingredient required for potion production. A single week later, a huge crowd gathers outside his brother's pharmacy experiences sudden, overwhelming success. Customers are flooding the store, happily trading their gathered herbs for minor healing potion. BunRv Garcia's exceptional reputation builds instant trust, causing demand to skyrocket rapidly. Mabel reports that they are accepting both medicinal and poisonous herbs in exchange for potions, which attracts even more suppliers. Ivan observes that customers are raving about the powerful effects of the potions. One fierce warrior even boasts that the potion works better than healing magic from a temple priest. BunRv proudly replies that no ordinary alchemist would dare make such bold claims about their product. In another part of the building, the Marquis scrutinizes a financial report and asks if the massive numbers represent total revenue, only to be informed that those astonishing numbers represent pure profit after all expenses and wages are deducted. The reply completely stuns him, as he realizes that his son has achieved something truly incredible. Due to the pharmacy's success, 2 additional pharmacists are hired through the trade master. Soon, every herb in Dungeon City funnels toward them, and collectors and alchemists from across the nation arrive to buy from them directly, shortening their supply chains. This development soon leads to the creation of a skull-marked purple poison tea. When asked about its safety, Ivan calmly explains it uses precise ratios of medicinal and poisonous herbs to build resistance in the drinker. Then he promptly drinks it himself to prove his point. Mabel warns that continued consumption will likely kill him, but he coolly responds that he drinks it precisely to prevent future death. He then offers some of the tea to Shine, who hesitates for a moment before firmly declining to participate. However, the girl jumps in fast, causing the servant to shriek for mercy since mimicking his madness might actually kill everyone. Suddenly it dawns on her that March has arrived, leading her to exclaim that the boy hits double digits quite shortly. That simple statement forces the kid to acknowledge an entire year has passed since he stepped into this body, because fancy aristocratic lessons are about to consume his schedule. The window for these weird exercises is basically closing fast. The silver-haired kid wonders if they should just confess the whole truth, yet he stays stubborn as a mule, recalling his past pathetic attempts at gaining power that ended in total disaster. The servant proposes a quick dungeon dive, but the master shuts it down, arguing the whole trio lacks the survival skills required. Shine keeps pestering him, asking for a specific reason. The hero reminds him they have a strict 2-year waiting period, insisting they won't budge until they are perfectly prepared. The subordinate whines that they have actually leveled up significantly during their intense training sessions. However, the young master silences him instantly, stating that the kid remains a total amateur. Looking back at their progress, he admits to his companions that they have actually improved quite a bit lately. He recalls when their goal was just matching other toddlers, though now they feel like tiny gods compared to them. The boy swears his head hasn't gotten big, promising to stay humble while standing before his supreme little boss. He warns that even tough soldiers get slaughtered in those pits, but he soon adds that they still have plenty of daylight to sharpen their blades in safety. He tells him to chill out and plan everything meticulously so they don't accidentally get themselves deleted. The boss wonders if his subordinate can endure the delay, and he reluctantly nods. Meanwhile, the girl suggests he use a softer tone, leading the boy to grumble with annoyance that the little lady is only 8 years old after all. Some time later, Mabel shows up with a crate of suspicious vegetation and begins her detailed report. It is the usual shipment of toxic plants, which the master identify as tied before offering his formal thanks. Mabel mentions the old man thinks they require extra help. This inspires a plan to hire Hannah as a helper. While the lady notes how the girls are blooming nicely, he asks about the Holy Cathedral. Shine explains that the new drug shop being built downtown has the religious folk sweating through their robes. The woman states she already snitched about the situation to the lady of the house a while ago. While she asks if he still enjoys squashing jellies every single day, he dreams of popping gooey blobs before they can squeal. Abel, ever practical, suggested a magical artifact that bestowed an utterly inescapable on him. Pled grip. Shine, after initially dismissing the idea, then suddenly remembered a specific magical artifact. This trinket, apparently a strength booster and supposedly a cinch to acquire, was linked by Mabel to Demon War 3's infamous Bloodstained Fist event, complete with a stern warning about its ridiculously intricate conditions. As this particular recollection unfurled itself, Evan suddenly remembered a peculiar random event that always seemed to fire off whenever he and Shine got chumly close. This specific scenario, tied to Shine's ordained birthday, would see Evan presenting him with a pair of suspiciously blood-stained gloves, claiming they bestowed incredible strength. Accepting this dubious gift, however, immediately crippled him, making his attacks feeble, and his skills completely unresponsive. Predictably, monsters would overwhelm him, leading to his swift and unfortunate end. Should he refuse them, he'd mysteriously keep the gloves, enter a treacherous dungeon, and still tragically fall when his magic utterly failed. Both choices, regrettably, ended in a thoroughly miserable tragedy. This curious artifact genuinely boosted strength, yes, but only after it was warm. The huge catch, however, was its power nullified any weapon, only granting enhancement when fighting entirely barehanded. Armed with this newfound revelation, he confidently decided the artifact wouldn't betray him against slimes. Since he currently wielded no other armaments, buoyed by fresh energy, he rallied the group, then purposefully led them out to begin their shopping spree, skillfully steering Mabel away from what appeared to be the primary mercantile establishment. He quickly explained the shop's artifacts were all cheap knockoffs, reminding them true dungeon explorers never sold authentic items in typical stores. Shine asked what happened instead, and even clarified explorers either kept these powerful artifacts for themselves, or they auctioned them at vast, secretive gatherings, or, regrettably, they ended up getting robbed by cunning rivals. Even emphasized that sheer temptation fueled every single one of these scenarios, much to Shine's absolute shock that such high drama could unfold over merely one trinket. Eden, however, nodded grimly, confirming that indeed, just one powerful artifact held the potential to irrevocably twist a person's entire fate. Shine proudly insisted this specific weakness would certainly not apply to him. Balhua wholeheartedly agreed, stating his particular class would never, ever truly change him. Even admitted it felt rather awkward to confidently boast about being uniquely different. However, he genuinely offered his heartfelt thanks. He then rejoined the group as they eagerly inquired about their next fascinating destination. With a renewed sense of resolute determination, he divulged that a handful of obscure locations still required his personal inspection, admitting he wasn't entirely certain if his elusive quarry still lingered there, finally pointing dramatically ahead and broadcasting their ultimate destination. As he spoke, Ivan, raising a cautionary finger like a seasoned professor, revealed a rather gruesome secret. Certain dungeon explorers actually attempt to munch on monster carcasses, completely disregarding the potent toxins they frequently harbor outside the dungeon. However, managing both such poison and volatile mana proves almost impossible. He added that only authorized individuals could consume them, while others secretly smuggled them out. Ivan mentioned a persistent rumor, eating mana-filled monsters purportedly made one significantly stronger. He quickly clears up the speculation, explaining it's just a rumor. Shine notes that if it had any truth to it, their generous young lord would have distributed some to them already. Meanwhile, even proposes that ingesting poison might instead build up immunity. The maid cautions him against attempting such a dangerous experiment, but our hero quickly promises he won't, then clarifies that their current visit to the butcher's shop has nothing to do with buying chops. They arrived at the aptly named Dual Blade Butcher Shop. The proprietor eyes them warily from behind the counter and demands to know who dares intrude. Even holds the stare, declaring that pointless formalities can be skipped since the shopkeeper recognizes them, and they recognize him right back. The butcher concedes he heard the rumors about this mysterious, well-dressed individual being far from ordinary, and seeing it now, he motions them inside. The butcher observes that a person of such obvious consequence wouldn't visit his establishment to trade or purchase sausages. Peering over the cutting block, the butcher asks outright if the visitor intends to capture him. However, the young lord ignores the question and directs attention to an object in his possession. He informs the butcher that this item holds significance far beyond what he recognizes, then prompts him to identify it. Even proposes to improve the man's standing in society in exchange for the artifact, but the butcher declines, feeling that faking ignorant is useless now. Even mentions he's encountered similar individuals in the past, cautioning that true power won't yield to someone undeserving of it. Our boy then brings up the butcher's forgotten ambition to become a chef. The revelation completely shocks the butcher. He then references the kingdom's special culinary certification for monster ingredients, proposing a recommendation for a career do-over in return for cooperation. The tension stretches in silence until the proprietor finally breaks and questions even about his true objective. Later, at the estate, Chine and Balua simultaneously rest their hands on a long sword and a glowing crimson jewel arranged upon the table. Even reflects on their previous successful stops at places called Crimson Stir-Fry and Orc Bar, where they had gathered these items. The objects remaining in their possession are considered part of their profitable acquisition, though neither the blade nor the jewel had recognized a true owner before this moment. Chine grasps the weapon and feels the powerful magical energy emanating from it. Meanwhile, Balua places her hand on the jewel and registers a significant warmth. Their master watches without speaking, knowing exactly why these artifacts hadn't bonded with previous owners. Chine raises the sword and ponders whether it was merely overlooked by others as a true artifact. Even agrees with the assessment, but challenges them to consider the problem more deeply. Even then reveals that these specific items were selected from Sheetan's hidden collection, because they contained flawed activation codes for possession. Explaining the specific error, he informs them that activating the dual blades requires a twin-blood individual to make contact with the crimson plate. Conversely, to control the jade flame sphere, the user must first touch a twin-blood individual. Some goofy glitch occurred because the cutters tripped over their own logic regarding who gets what. The lad recalls trusting those useless tutorial books only to flop harder than a wet noodle. Hunting clues and finishing chores was pointless since the treasure literally giggled at anyone wasting decades, so he just grabbed both simultaneously to beat the system. This boss insists these represent the absolute top tier pointy sticks within Sheetan, whereas his mate shows respect while the kid stays skeptical, leading the boss to suggest a quick swap and a second attempt, promising they would finally get the goodies. Then the trade sparked a massive magical boom. Bright rays soaking the kid's blade while spacey fire swallows. Maids are vent. Eventually, the duo clutches their correct shiny toys, which makes the hero ponder why a digital hiccup managed to survive in this actual reality, likening it to grandma's secret cooking that tastes better than it looks. He decides these tools are way cooler than basic magical conjuring. Honestly, he has no clue how to process this weird universe anymore. The guy visualizes his gamer chair and monitors, thinking about how this realm was once just a bunch of pixels he adored. He wonders if he is a legit human or just some fancy hallucination breathing in this atmosphere. The lady grips the radiant crimson ball to describe its messy lock while the boy checks the dual slicers in his palms. The protagonist muses that his previous assumption of a blunder might actually be a clever feature of the world. As the fighter asks if he is losing his marbles, he replies that seeing their grinning faces is enough for him, expressing his gratitude and making their jaws drop. The boy demands to know why he is grateful, but the lady says they are the ones who should be bowing for the loot. This makes the kid mutter a thanks. Then the lady follows suit while calling him her boss. Keeping his cool, he announces the main event and slaps some fancy handware onto the wooden surface. The master mentions he dropped a mountain of cash at the Orc Tavern for these bad boys, though he darkly remembers that these mittens were the reason both he and the hero ended up in coffins. Recalling that tragedy, he squeezes the leather and realizes how much he has leveled up thanks to Mirasol's jewelry saving his hide, while sliding the gear over his fingers. The fabric changes hue as a violet aura explodes nearby. Pure juice pumps through his veins, while glowing balls manifest in his hands. Stats jump 0.5. Act 0.7. as he smashes the glass sphere, making a bright flash explode. Following that, the little lord destroys the jelly, feeling certain he can add blob beating to his daily schedule. Suddenly, that shiny throat jewelry glitters, causing him to look at the trinket belonging to Mirasol, a piece of metal showcasing newly acquired experience. While he punches more blobs, our protagonist notices squashing jelly takes much longer, realizing that since his jewelry got buffed, the blobs basically hit the gym too. Fully aware of the situation, he understands he requires a new talent instead of a toy. He admits there is no other way, and shouts for Mabel. Upon entering, the maid wonders if her boss specifically yelled for her. The boy orders the girl to grab some drink laced with lethal venom. She brings the brew quickly, allowing him to remember his tummy deals with liquid garbage perfectly after years of spicy poison training. The lad gulps down spicy juice within those veins while choosing to practice that satanic slap, that terrifying ultimate move from the Great Conflict which deletes enemies by poking their soft spots. Though most folks think it only ends fights, our protagonist understands this secret ability works against monsters showing maximum vitality, assuming various requirements get satisfied, though studying such techniques remains an absolute chore for most mortals. Running some numbers, the kid investigates progress made, especially regarding rank disparities separating him from his victim, unarmed swinging motions made possible by dirty hand coverings that nobody classifies as legitimate equipment, monsters keeping their life bars filled via that mystical item hanging on a string. He mentions the final hurdle is the last requirement, where the foe has to be totally surprised. Our young master aims for victory by striking that goo exactly when it spawns. Plus, the final rule requires feeling incredibly sick, a condition easily met, since he drinks literal poison for breakfast. However, performing this maneuver feels tricky, compared to gaming worlds where people merely click buttons. Inside this world, the boy aligns physical movement, spell casting, plus physical contact through primal gut reactions. He keeps telling his mind he must succeed no matter the cost. Several sunrises eventually pass. His maid requests help from the veteran brewer regarding sore limbs, so the elderly chap starts mixing ingredients. This outcome pleases the girl since her colleague possesses all necessary materials nearby. Acting inquisitive, the geezer speculates about why our tiny leader requires that specific balm. She frets, explaining that he's been living on pure willpower and 0 calories, basically turning into a zombie while training for an unknown goal. Bernard notes it sounds like a non-stop screaming match in there, wondering how long before he hits mute permanently. The hallway outside his door sounded like an angry woodpecker convention, with people hammering and shouting his name. They implored him to show some sign of life and confirm he hadn't spontaneously combusted yet. Inside, Evan's body gave up, sending him crashing to the floor in a desperate struggle for air. A few days prior, Mabel offered him a mystery potion and a pill, casually inquiring about his newfound fascination with kicking things. Evan nodded, confirming her intuitive guess. He launched into a complex explanation about Devil's Attack, a move where you abruptly cancel a basic strike to guarantee a final, powerful hit, like how Shine uses his daggers to perform a cancel maneuver. The hardest part, he stated, was choosing the perfect opening strike from the numerous options available. For now, he decided kicking was the superior choice, as his hands were necessary for slime extermination and couldn't be tied up. He noted that achieving perfect timing during the slime's appearance only piled more difficulty onto the maneuver. Even lamented that physically performing this move felt infinitely harder than executing it with a simple clack on a keyboard. Mabel, completely lost in his technical jargon, just wished him a polite good luck. He offered his gratitude, vowing to pour all his effort into the task. When she offered to stay and observe, he politely dismissed her back to her chores. Returning to the present, a voice outside begged him to just stick his head out and prove he was still breathing. He internally swore that compromise was off the table, determining to master the Devil's Attack before he hit the double digits. He knew he wasn't going to be a background character casualty in this life. He even let out a final, desperate roar of exertion. Meanwhile, Shine dramatically pounded his fists on the desk, declaring that his patience had officially run dry. He confessed to being ignorant of the attack's true strength, but worried that his young master Ivan was dangerously close to self-destructing. Belua answered with unnerving calm. She assured him that if Ivan genuinely needed this skill, he possessed the will to achieve it by himself. Elsewhere, Mabel sprinted down the hallway, balancing a precarious pile of health potions. She skidded to a stop right outside his door, noticing that the usual cacophony of screaming had abruptly vanished. Mabel rapped sharply on the wood. Reedon and the Marquise quickly arrived, shouting his name repeatedly, and the Marquise immediately demanded the master key. She explained that the door was magically sealed, only Ivan possessed the power to unlock it from the inside. Reedon suddenly recalled the significance of this specific date on the calendar. He wondered aloud if Ivan had finished his objective, reminding him exactly why this day mattered. Finally, the sound of movement echoed from inside the room. The door creaked open, and Ivan stepped out to face the concerned crowd. Reedon rushed forward with a warm hug, wishing him a happy 10th birthday while the staff watched in relief. Shine and Beluo shouted in shock, while Eric darted forward to verify that Ivan was truly in one piece. Following a brief quiet, the younger kid swears he feels fantastic and vows to avoid a coffin. That boy asks his father for a mystical cellar prize, using his naming day and store gains as leverage. The scenery changes to a tiny shack, representing the next phase of his master scheme. A glass box holds some fancy ear rocks that sparkle like expensive crystal. An old teacher giggles with joy, shouting about how the lad actually possesses a brain. The youngster confesses that school remains brutal, even with a past life cheat sheet. He grumbles that typical isekai protagonists usually become super geniuses without even trying. Yet for him, basic homework feels like climbing a giant mountain, with the tutor leading. The lad fights against tangled bloodlines, global politics, and that confusing net of high society connections, since failing this test might literally get his head chopped off. Flashbacks of the third demonic brawl show many ways to die because of snobby foreigners, making him briefly want to ruin his handsome face. But Mabel screams about its worth. That servant asks whether the lad lost his mind by only selecting those studs. However, the youngster demands the jewelry because it is his absolute favorite, feeling thankful toward the genetic donors. He grabs the Frosty Peak jewelry to recharge his energy faster, getting ready for whatever disaster comes next. His workout hours keep getting longer. Plus the servant mentions the child reached the age for swinging dangerous blades. The youngster argues that he still lacks a favorite blade while those hand-wrapped remain suck. This renders the limb jump, while the girl argues that raw power is vital to escaping dark pits. But he retorts that fancy folk should only worry about things that actually were. He settles for punching people in the face, while waiting for the perfect murder tool to appear. The boy thinks his skills are odd, thus promising to sample every unique item before choosing a specialty in 2 years. That Eagle Aid leader called Michael watches closely. That push youth from Shurian bloodlines patrols the yard, demanding bucket-headed warriors who vow to shield this place. The boy nears, recalling that in the pixel world, this armored guy was barely higher on the totem pole than himself. However, the real dude seems extremely spooky. Our hero remembers with a shiver that Michael, bless his valiant heart, is destined to fall defending the Marquis clan when the Demon King's quartet of formidable devs inevitably crash the party. A looming catastrophe compelling both sides into unforeseen action. As the rigorous training session kicks off, our protagonist shows up ready to rumble, only to raise an eyebrow when the captain casually declares he's also there to get his combat fix. Much to the hero's astonishment, Ivan's face contorts into a classic confused puppy look, utterly clueless about the meaning. That is, until Michael dramatically rips off his shirt, probably for effect, announcing he's taking over Ivan's combat training personally from this moment forward. He then claps Ivan on the back, commending his dedication to fisticuffs above all else, though a flicker of surprise crosses his face that it's this particular lad. Our suddenly rather flustered youth attempts, with a voice bordering on squeaky, to clarify that a teensy-weensy misunderstanding has clearly occurred. However, the knight, puffing out his chest, grandly pronounces himself the finest instructor in the entire metropolis, possibly even the realm, and stands utterly unyielding to any protests, as Ivan stalls, courteously suggesting the captain's schedule might already be quite packed. Michael simply scoffs at the suggestion, proclaiming his dedicated pupil's welfare now trumps all other concerns. He then cheerfully proposes they begin with the fundamentals, all while steadily advancing, leaving our poor protagonist desperately attempting a tactical withdrawal. A month later, Ivan finds himself gratefully collapsing beneath a tree's comforting shade, catching a breather just as Shine casually strolls over to join him. Bayu, ever the attentive one, offers a fresh towel to wick away his glistening brow, a gesture Ivan accepts with unadulterated relief. Shine whispers a query, questioning if an equivalent provision is meant for himself. Nonetheless, every single gaze stayed fixed solely upon Ivan. Meanwhile, Michael announces his upcoming absence, needing to clear out pesky dungeons starting tomorrow in anticipation of the inevitable magical backwash. He then commanded solitary practice for the duration of his absence. Our hero distinctively recollects the knight's previous aversion to venturing into dank dungeons. However, Beams, stating Ivan's rapid development had genuinely sparked his own renewed desire for self-improvement. He confesses, somewhat wistfully, that even in his twilight years, a desire for betterment still burns brightly. The lad, ever the pragmatist, agrees this is excellent, noting increased power aids both education and safeguarding the Marquis clan. During their chat, the captain eloquently details the finer points of sidestepping nesty snares, navigating tricky routes, and engaging in spirited fisticuffs with grotesque beasts. Even then, with a furrowed brow, worries if that isn't just another flavor of hard work, but with a patient sigh, explains that ascending levels within a perilous dungeon operates on a fundamentally distinct principle. However, the earnest Yu, placing a hand dramatically over his heart, declares his unwavering conviction that the glittering prizes from dungeons are simply another guise for hard-earned compensation. He draws a direct parallel to dedicated strength training, where daring to risk one's very existence within monster-infested labyrinths ultimately awards those coveted level-ups as the glorious pay. Even also fervently proclaims that chronological progression is utterly irrelevant, for the Almighty, in his infinite wisdom, doles out judgment and blessings with perfect impartiality. In his mind, there's absolutely no distinction whatsoever between the sweat equity invested in training, and that expended within a dungeon, as the outcomes invariably correspond precisely to the initial input. He therefore sagely concludes that truly stellar dungeon delves inevitably yield truly spectacular outcomes, then innocently inquires if the captain concurs with his profound revelation. With a satisfied nod, finds the response perfectly adequate. He then sheepishly confesses to feeling utterly daft for his past dungeon, shunning ways, now grasping that true rewards arrive in a different, utterly dependable package, guaranteed, because they were directly from the big boss upstairs. Prior to his departure, the knight vows to lavish even with some grand recompense, but the clever lad merely, and quite pointedly, requests a slightly less torturous training regimen upon his mentor's triumphant return. But exhibiting unwavering resolve, solemnly promises to unleash all his pedagogical techniques upon he then following the dungeon excursion. Internally the lad realizes his master plan flipped upside down like a clumsy turtle. This steel-clad leader directs the gang toward Ratington's zealously plus doubling practice rigor, while his pal confirms everyone must stop merely loitering about. Jime remarks regarding how he plans to escalate the chief's drilling routines significantly. The protagonist becomes overwhelmed by gooey creature training, boring speeches, plus intense physical sparring routines. Following various sunsets, even encounters the business mogul once that armored combatant previously vanished towards the monster lair. During their talk, the hairless gentleman salutes Ivan while declaring he delivered the tiny humans mentioned during their prior conversation. That little tyke responds to the label Paul, and the small girl merely requests to be addressed as Mary. This lead actor internally muses whether these children altered their aliases prior to debuting within the software. The boy directs the maid towards washing those kids before leading them towards some fresh bedrooms. That woman complies. Although the boy quickly asserts that the scenario differs from her perverted assumptions, he explains the duo are actual deities, thanking the merchant boss for this profitable long-term gamble. That businessman subsequently delivers prying dossiers about those specific folks Ivan previously designated. The lad sought intelligence regarding those primary figures featured within that infernal struggle saga. Understanding it will be trickier than finding that old guy Bernard. The boy recognizes most actors are currently dormant, plus even the title or background regarding the third hero stays hidden. Determined, he chooses to keep working anyway. Since the sidekick queries whether such data satisfies the boy, the youngster affirms his contentment, noting his plan to succor remaining individuals should they eventually materialize, reviewing that register of targets, while swearing to bolster movements fighting against nasty creeps polluting this planet. Shine verbalizes his curiosity regarding whether the boy intends to occupy the combat vanguard personally. However, the boy rotates his noggin. This kid identifies as an insignificant bystander offering help using merchandise plus straying away from the action instead of charging forward. Promptly stop. Balhua unexpectedly hollers about school starting, which makes Ivan howl because his brain totally deleted the calendar. Afterward, the ancient potion master shouts out. That youngster serenely devours frozen snacks until the elder eventually probes whether any chaos struck their shop once July comments. Quite puzzled, the kid begs the man for more details. Bernard explains that those wool outfits are basically poor bolsons for summer, noting he pities the workers sweating buckets while trapped in thick fabric. He claims weather logic is vital, then brags about being the finest sage. Even counters that the shop cannot run on his efforts alone, demanding help. Hannah enters with some refreshing shaved ice, making the boy wonder if she is currently roasting inside. Though she claims comfort, he notes the sun and offers an apology, vowing to order some breezy outfits when he gets home. She expresses gratitude, while he suggests she bug him, or Mabel whenever, moved by such charity. The geezer thanks the kid for treating staff right. The young master asks if those words are actually sincere. The alchemist sighs that while his head works, his ancient frame is failing. He claims the gap vanishes if the boy studies under him. Since anyone learns, the mentor orders a daily hour of study, and tells him to work hard. Under evening shadows, a mysterious silhouette creeps toward a massive, ornate building, inside which a sister finds the priest, and mentions that new shop. The holy man scowls then whacks his chair, blaming them for the lack of coin. Fuming with anger, he shouts that their cheap medicine insults the heavens, promising that he will certainly make those meddling pharmacists pay for it. After the lecture concludes, Hannah sticks her head inside to see if the lesson finally ended, only to find him lying flat on the hard floor. Bernard stares at the heat and says he would tutor him forever. The hero quips that he might actually master this by age 60, then mentions he has better places to be before bolting away. Though the master thinks the child might actually surpass him quite soon, the expert realizes his student is leveling up while also getting smarter. Bernard wonders if the boy is still too green for brewing. Hannah mentions her arrival was timed for when the shop finally quieted down. She mentions the Holy Temple is currently baiting people with free spiritual handouts. At the chapel, a sister informs the leader that the rival shop is losing traffic. He grins like a smug cat, claiming the world is finally correcting itself. This success is just a passing phase, she says, criticizing his dangerous hostility. Ethics are irrelevant, he snaps, whining about their empty coffers since the pharmacy arrived. He blames the nobility for stealing explorers, claiming his greed is actually a holy quest for the goddess. Don't poke that shop, the nun pleads, unless you enjoy starting national disasters. The man shrugs, resolving to steer clear of pestering the aristocratic household personally. Those pill shop employees are blameless, the lady claims while sighing deeply. He dismisses her concerns, claiming no deaths were intended, prompting her to scream that she is completely finished. Shortly afterward, the priestess is busy getting hammered inside a neighborhood tavern. The woman grumbles regarding her superior's artificial holiness and his obsession with gold. Free blessings are a scam, she grumbles, since the low-rank minions do everything. Standing close, the main character observes her snacking habits and proposes paying the bill. Hearing her name, Serena nearly chokes on her drink in surprise. She guzzles ale, sending choice insults toward her bald boss. While totally plastered, she rants about the clergy, wondering if quitting to become a private priestess for a wealthy count is a better career choice. He even proposes she joins his team instead, vowing to provide a bottomless budget. Notwithstanding his generous invitation, the woman confesses such a path is impossible. The boy inquires about her reasoning. The lady explains her personal pledge to transform the church into something respectable. He bluntly retorts that she is basically trying to repair a sinking ship alone. She admits defeat, noting she is already close to being fired anyway. Even recalls she was tossed out of the main church branch, deciding her termination might be beneficial. He considers how he already altered the fates of both Shine and Bellevue. Maybe he can improve her miserable future as well. He asks why she avoids seeking help when her own strength is clearly failing. Looking completely baffled, she tries to grasp his mysterious point. He suggests they sit down to dissect the real mess and find a clever solution. Sex. And even loiters near Dane, while eyeing the crowd like a hungry hawk, cautioning them about sneak attacks but swearing everyone is safe, reminding the group that since they were invaded here, the host is legally obligated to keep them alive. Dane insists every single pill pusher at the shop basically wears the Marquis crest on their forehead, and any punch to your faces is like slapping the Duke right in his noble teeth. A confused staffer pipes up and asks which idiot would actually try to mess with them. He then scoffs that it is totally obvious, pointing his finger at that holy bishop who is currently plotting our pharmacy's doom. Folks wonder if the priest lost his marbles by poking the Marquis, though the smart ones know that is precisely why we are targets. A clever guy links those free magical prayers to the plot, guessing they were meant to ruin our glorious profit margins. Our main man ignores the logic, claiming the reason is irrelevant since we already have a trap set for those religious goons. Bernard explains that several rookies have been brewing sketchy liquids using trash plants in their spare time. However, the juice is way too disgusting to put on a shell, at least according to his snobby expert palate. He suggests donating these drakes to the slums for emergency use, promising to taste every vial and threatening to ban any failure from touching a single leaf for an absolute eternity. The workers holler for the plan, but the push-in maker shuts them down, stating this is not a game and will stop once the garbage bin is empty. Now focusing on the real jerks, even mentions that leaving the building is like asking the church to jump them in a dark alleyway. Bernard argues they can use this bait to show how pathetic those temple guys actually are. The kid nods but insists on being super careful so those holy liars cannot worm their way out of trouble. The boy suddenly produces a few crusty scrolls from his pockets, showing secret papers from a mystery snitch that list every single armored goon planning to jump them tonight. He tells the squad to keep their eyes peeled and bring those idiots back breathing. He instructs Dane to leak the info to the guards, then kicks off the plan, and later, even trolls the crowd about free holy magic, claiming Shirton is paradise. Down in the gutters, a pharmacy grunt screams about free juice, and tells the locals to form a civilized line. The locals chug the brew and pass bottles to their little brats. Dai notes he never realized the interns produce so much junk, enough to drown the whole neighborhood in mediocre medicine. A wrinkled lady praises the wealthy little boy, claiming that her heart stopped hurting the second she swallowed that magic swamp water while walking. Even hears Dane babbling about how much the peasants adore his pretty face, noting that acting for others is a great way to attract fans. Sir Shiny Armor promises the situation won't go south. Yet a noisy radio chatter rudely interrupts his heroic mood, screaming about some kleptomaniac trying to steal overpriced cough syrup. Rent. But cops tackle the burglar, while warnings about more shoplifters pop up. The big warrior acknowledges the hustle command, spotting that the baddies already started. During his nerdy analysis, the protagonist argues folks matter more than bricks, predicting allies are next. He queries if the warrior feels spooky vibes, though the tank stalls. That blade unsheathes faster than a hungry kid grabbing a cookie. They both swivel when a guy in a suspicious hoodie appears, glaring at the poor sap they want to shank. Our hero knows this guy, the old fan of the sneaky, a low-level boss rocking a magical invisibility blanket. The guard yells about doom, instantly acting. The thief announces his job is deleting everyone handing out free juice nearby. He mocks fancy ranks, mentioning that gutting the kid is just a bonus task. Sir Grumpy gets mad. However, the young genius processes facts extremely fast, remembering that Bishop Creepy uses this hitman for permanent deletions. He expected foul play, alerting the staff earlier. Yet it clicks that the humans are the prizes, not buildings. Facing the edgy assassin, the brawl kicks off, while the boy admits he doubted the creep would actually show up today. The burglar flinches since his secret identity just got leaked. During the surprise attack, the boy checks if the warrior can solo this boss. Facing a hidden foe, the guard grumbles it sucks, yet vows to keep the kid breathing until the cavalry lands. Our protagonist refuses to let his babysitter perish, telling the tank to shut his peepers. Vaulting ahead, he chucks a gadget down that explodes with enough light to blind gods, then hollers for his armored buddy to swing. The titan lunges, his sharp steel leaving a nasty mark on the villain, and the thief drops. The warrior wants an interrogation, but the kid shrugs, knowing the guide is a total dead end. Instantly, a massive hairless thug lunges forward, while wielding a sharp blade. Dane bellows out some advice. Nonetheless, our hero sidesteps, seizes the fallow slim, and delivers a swift gut shot. That armored guy attempts to complain, though Even ignores him, assuming the surprise fight concluded. Our boy focuses on the spicy vengeance his noble clan plans for those foolishly betraying them. Inside the luxurious estate, the main servant explains how the trapped assailant wouldn't talk, merely insisting Even looked like a wealthy loot bag, proving Bishop Saturn's guilt seems impossible. As his trail vanished, while those shiny warriors take total blame themselves, citing bitterness concerning lowered church offerings. They claim they lacked knowledge the Sheridan's successor might visit them. The Grand Patriarch observes that people clearly fail to grasp his kin's true strength. Their servant mentions the Pritchard is definitely crazy, proposing an official moment to the guild might prevent future violent surprises. Dad says no way, claiming if those fighters actually gave a hoot about their status, those cowards wouldn't ever attempt such a gutsy stunt. The man determines the moment has arrived to unleash absolute might within the Sheridan house. Subsequently, the valet mentions how the boy says he found a special tool to smack the group, given a quartet of summaries. He then informs the Patriarch, clarifying how shortly the pair shall possess cure for totally wrecking Sid Cleric's life. That lord wonders whether this involves his secret spy hiding among those holy warriors. That smart kid agrees, saying how if the pair simply sits tight for now, that female spy provides ironclad proof intended to ruin the. Our protagonist notes the corrupt clerics swipe benevolent loot intended for church leaders, further stating Saturn instructed soldiers to raid that apothecary. The scheme is prepared. Visit the squadron while carrying a proposal. Shove every crime onto that preacher, letting the Marquis's household manage him. Conversely, they will mask the disgrace to safeguard the guild's name. The father sees a great opportunity to fake friendships and gather more allies. Whereas the son notes the warriors will surely be forced to say yes. Thinking deeply, the parent stops, inquiring if it is possible their secret source is just fibbing. Even clarifies the girl is talented, occupies a humble rank, and he actually encountered her himself, thus she remains reliable. That dad concurs, opting to hang around until the official news arrives. Next, our boy greets Mabel plus Bayou, applauding the effort spent on the brat. He hands over the difficult task of babysitting. The young lad whines like a broken flute, begging Shine for assistance while flailing like a landed trout, howling for freedom. As the old man bolts, he rots in solitary for 72 hours. Serena gifts even a mountain of dirt, making him the king of this pile of scandalous paperwork. He jokes that offing the priest fixes their celestial migraine nicely. She admits she spent years collecting toxic gossip, just to destroy the man's professional life. Ivan suggests that reporting him to the authorities would cancel the jerk's life subscription instantly. That lady speculates whether those stolen files might actually kill the poor sap. Believing that only the fancy family name would end up trash, Ivan retorts that messing with the pharmacy was suicide, though her snitching saves many necks. Those files function as armor, stopping the Shirton bunch and the church guys from brawling openly. The youth figures the creep felt untouchable unless someone produced actual receipts. However, throughout the third monster scrap, the boss completely smashes those temple fighters. Deciding the jerk picked a terrible lie, the youth commands the lady to quit moping immediately. The girl feels happy for assisting, hoping the boy wins while swearing total future backing. The boy rejects her application for his clan, insisting she keep hiding among the religious folk. The lad notes that if a hand-picked pawn snatches the church's big pointy hat, survival odds skyrocket for everybody, including that town, the noble house, plus his personal safety. During court, the villain screams about lies while several B5 protectors grab his limbs. However, the powerful noble demands he cork his noe yapping immediately, cataloging each foul deed done to the medical center, that youngster, plus all citizens. The Lord jails those sketchy guards and vows the holy man gets kicked out before hanging. After the signal, guards haul the screaming jerk away as he claims immunity. The ruler announces such punishments for anyone bothering his kin or making a mess. Outside, he chats with the curious mob, declaring that big shots ought to do their jobs without trampling over any regular folks. Relaxing near some plants, the lad notes this outcome ought to suffice for now. That medical store gains stability, as the incoming priest keeps flirting with the ruler to stay useful. Finding the result fair, he hunts for more chores, so the assistant identifies a talented clerk from the old regime. Within the massive temple, Serena Boleyn is currently facing the religious leader. After sharing her name, she mentions being quite stoked to start her jig. Nearby, folks claim Brothers Pharmacy is a massive win, which is now common knowledge. Although whispers suggest that Ivan was the sneaky genius behind the whole plan, Ivan grumbles about this mess, since he realizes that filling his brother's shoes is impossible. He wondered how his frantic struggle to survive as a background extra led here. Once summoned, Mabel insists that the boy remains a truly remarkable dude. She adds that if he skips the family throne, she will also bail. Being a genius does not mean the boy must accept a stuffing Marquis title. Ivan confesses he intended to spill the beans at noon during his first audit, but he speaks now, declaring that he will never be a fancy Marquis. Instead, he vows to follow the sweaty road of a knight captain. Ivan quizzes Mabel on noble chores, so she lists city rule and dungeon guarding. He verifies her statement is spot on. She predicts his big goal, and the boy simply nuts. He ponders the dungeon squad, who clear out monster pits in independent teams. Recalling past game failures where Eric took over, he bravely vows to raid monster pits himself to protect his sibling. Recalling the merchant's vow of 3 Ds, he tallies shine and value, realizing he has 7 allies now. Ivan resolves to chat with his old man soon about joining the warriors. When questioned, Mabel mentions what rascals Shine and Balua are. She says that Shine is busy swinging his blade. Meanwhile, Balua has wandered off on a solo mission. Walking along, Mabel hints he should handle Balua before she gets any funny ideas. He answers dryly, and though Mabel begs to join his troop, he refuses, since she already runs Brothers Pharmacy. During their walk, he sees people scurrying down the hall and asks what the rush is. A servant notes the junior mistress just delivered a tiny female infant. Our boy slowly digests the update regarding his brand new female sibling. Indoors, everyone focuses on Miriam D. Sheetun, and the daughter, which silences the succession gossip. Our guy loves this, as it delays his own scary speech about dungeon hunting. While things are peaceful, Mabel likens his emotions to her hidden desire to serve only him. Ivan sits there, looking like he swallowed a lemon during the party. The lad confesses things seem funky, primarily since that third demonic conflict lacked a Sheridan girl, because this lineage basically drove the entire plot. Her total omission feels sketchy. He calculates that a young lass should have appeared once, meaning she originally never existed. Perhaps she wed and vanished, though that theory is essentially a dumpster fire, seeing as the quest starts in 9 winters. Weighing various options, he wonders if his meddling finally broke the space-time continuum, or maybe she was destined for birth, but failed to cross the finish line. A gloomy realization strikes that in the first draft, she likely bit the dust. The lady suggests relaxing, claiming her brother remains her favorite despite that cute infant. The boy moans, grumbling that his fears involve different matters. That tiny princess actually beams, plus Ivan pledges the newborn was actually flirting with him. While Eric insists she was admiring his muscular frame, Mom hugs her, while Miriam thanks Redding for the backup, though she gracefully returns the applause to the actual mother. Our hero observes Miriam is just the backup spouse, whereas the primary bride already birthed the successor. He recalls that Miriam had never successfully produced an offspring until this moment. Within the simulation, she acted like a wicked shrew who accidentally triggered his demise. Yet in this reality, she seems about as threatening as a wet noodle. It occurs to him that her villainous transformation was caused by future trauma he might block. Should this fellow pivot destiny, perhaps he can dodge the Reaper and stop her from going full Sith Lord. Even recalls Miriam D. Sheridan, the Marquis' second spouse, questioning if she was born way, or if some tragic disaster broke her spirit, and he suspects he knows that exact tragedy. Bernard leans forward, explaining a very dark scenario. He mentions that even in a fortress packed with holy guards, babies are surprisingly fragile. Bernard concludes such a disaster would probably involve a nasty hex or a lethal flu. Our hero mumbles those scary syllables softly alone. Next he abruptly whacks the furniture, yelling that Elizabeth faces a terrible fate. That elderly fellow smoothly answers that he already understands the situation. He implies the noble home is like a vault, so searching elsewhere makes more sense. That fellow mutters about a brainwave, suggesting that provided his genius hunch works, our team will rescue the girl besides protecting every random villager too. His primary plan involves hunting for sticky beast leftovers scattered around this urban sprawl. The man remembers that nasty dungeon spill they barely plugged earlier, making this whole mess smell fishier than a wee old salmon. Moments later, our main lad notices a weird puddle sitting on the pavement, shouting for the crew. He gestures wildly at a murky, questionable blotch, labeling the mess as Orcish bowel movements. That leader claims he predicted this discovery, although the soldier doubts whether this is truly feces or simply leftover renovation gone. The fellow observes the shade is perfect, guessing lazy workers missed it while sprinting to finish their shit. Under heavy questioning, that armored fellow wonders why anyone cares about this mess. This soldier argues that whenever monster scraps were lethal, this town would become a graveyard already. Seeing how many swords are created from teeth, the guy says no, clarifying that solid gear is fine, but the real killers are the nasty juices and biological slop. Since those liquids carry nasty germs, he asks whether they know about dungeon flu, which makes a body floppy after sitting in monster holes too long. Folks with zero magical stamina or those diving into the deep scary basement levels usually snag this bug. The man probes them more, wondering whether those people might trust his claim regarding how this plague could actually escape those pits and strike the streets. He clarifies that piling up enough cave garbage in a single spot basically turns your living room into a monster lair, particularly in towns recently soaked by monster floods, even if the magic air is slightly thinner there. However, that urban plague persists, even when it dies out fast, noting that unless a child remains super fragile, this bug stays mostly harmless. The fellow repeats those specific syllables, a tiny infant, appearing totally stunned. The dude explains the illness is not a killer on its own, plus doctors have zero cures. The fellow mentions the true peril happens whenever a sick person catches some second cold, turning them into a goner. Because that magical leak occurred recently, this veteran warns regarding an enormous wave of sniffles which will surely strike the population. Their current mission is to hunt down the germs before everyone starts sneezing uncontrollably, clinging to just tiny, pathetic hints. Our main man barks orders, telling them to alert the nobles so babies stay indoors while he sprints away. Right then, that woman Serena charges inside, shouting toward the hero, while gasping. The leader questions her identity, so our guy clarifies this woman is a sacred priestess within that elite club our hero truly likes. She pants that disaster has struck, since the count of hacking humans has exploded, leaving the holy healers totally overwhelmed. The knight grumbles that provided this bug is catchy, the entire population is toasted, so our hero insists on viewing those patients, and she nods, guiding the group fast into a chamber filled with folks groaning on their mattresses. The doctor checks those pale bodies, declaring that the nasty virus has decided to evolve a bit. Nevertheless, he could craft some juice for the pox shortly, so he instructs the lad to collect all the drug makers from the sibling shop. The youngster shouts that they should crush the plague during its start, mentioning to the bunch of laborers that their aid is required. Acting as one, the potion peddlers claim it is a catastrophe that even a heavenly miracle would fail to stop. Bernard quietly mentions that a solution is already tucked in his brain. He confesses its traits mutated slightly. However, he finished examining those bits already, even gathers the troops, saying that just like Gramps mentioned, they must only concentrate on brewing the antidote, and the mixers roar with joy. The family apothecary and the holy cathedral toss themselves into the labor, using the High Lord's assistance. The ailing get tucked away while dirty spots receive a very fast scrubbing. Once the chaos fades, the boy appreciates Bernard, while Bernard clarifies that wreckage was limited only by lucky teamwork between bosses, the liquid makers, and the church, though he warns that some deaths happen regardless of speed. He suggests that everyone should consider the massive number of folks rescued by their activities. The youth responds by giving a firm affirmation. Then a booming shout rings from the hallway, and Mabel barrels in, frantic, yelling that Lady Liz is looking much worse. The lad sprints behind the girl, finding Liz's parents squeezing the infant. As the little kid huffs for air in her embrace, Evan's mind zooms while he questions the cause, doubting if the tonic actually flawed. A scary thought hits him. Maybe the concoction failed entirely, and as things start, Evan cradles the little tot in his arms while her mom asks what to do. Sure, the poor girl is toast. The main guy hates quitting, and pivots toward Bernard, inquiring if any alternatives exist. The fossil responds, a specific liquid can buff a person's muscle forever, but they are missing the raw bits. This syrup is so scarce that even a guy who survived 4 massive devil brawls hardly recognizes it. The kid notices Liz is level 1. He recollects that points go to whoever delivers the finishing bomb. Determining this plan is awesome. He calls it jelly, intending to soften it until its health is gone. The protagonist employs her covered fist to end its life. While clutching the blob, he begs Liz to act, claiming she just needs to do the final poke. He pinches the goop in his palm, then guides the tiny hand of Liz to punch it. The helper and the group shout loudly. He nags her to squeeze harder while clutching that ugly critter like a teddy bear. The whole crowd cheers the lady forward. Finally, the gooey mess hits the planks, allowing the exhausted lady to snuggle her newborn really close. The lad mumbles about being glad, and she softly agrees with his words. His parents look stunned and happy that Liz made it, while the boss screams for holy doctors. A person shouts that the kid rescued her life, then tackles the hero for hugs. Bernard pats the youngster's head, saying he performed a swell job and deserves prizes. That man admits the trick was weird yet functional, noting only our hero managed such insanity. Mabel sprints inside, squeezing him tight while making a loud, dramatic scene. That terrible name Velfen haunts his thoughts. A nasty germ that wrecked a whole nation suddenly enters his busy brain. Recalling the digital pixels, he muses on how the noble fix things, and the body count. He contemplates how things would suck if the family potion shop hadn't stepped up to help. The mentor says to stop being moody. He stirs drinks peacefully and tells the lad to use his smarts to save people from doom. He mentions that if trying fails, just toss the towel, since a universe without any heroes is basically garbage and not worth the effort. Back at the big house, the lad cradles the infant while Eric waves his arms, shouting for attention. He even jokes how the tiny human prefers his company, so Eric chooses to squeeze every person until they pop, though our protagonist kicks his sibling away while keeping the infant safe. Dad observes the chaos, falls the kid over, and notes that rescuing her preserved the town and the kingdom. He wonders if his sibling motivated this brave choice. Even stares into the old man's gaze, then announces he plans to lead the scary pit warriors. While practicing, that tall sibling Eric worked until he melted, mimicking the effort of his gifted relative. The main character realizes the fancy lord already smells the truth. Thus our hero thinks the moment for talking has arrived. The boy informs his pops that a dream of leading the monster fighting squad exists. The nobleman looks bored, figuring this whole thing involves his other son. Our lord says okay, promising to provide the boy plus his soldiers some serious backing. However, there's a catch, meaning the kid has to grow up before getting the job. That youngster grumpily accepts. The old man suggests he start building his secret lair and training future lackeys before the cast begins. The boy salutes his superior. Pops threatens to cancel everything unless preparations finish by adulthood, so Evan agrees, knowing he has 7 years to plan. Grinning like a thief, the kid claims a title was previously selected. The pill pushers are throwing a wild party now that their grueling shift finally ended, swapping the scent of dusty plants for cheap booze while they stumble toward the pub. A few poor souls remain stuck inside, because they alone know the secret recipe. The kid warns the old man that folks will likely stop washing their hands once the sickness vanishes, claiming they need to be lightning fast when the next disaster strikes. The senior citizen argues that staying busy solves everything, noting their little shop became famous thanks to all the sneezing, ensuring the monarch realizes that science beats praying to invisible entities every single time. The main character mulls this over, while his mentor guesses the monarch calls shortly. It dawns on him that the royal plan involves putting a shop on every single street corner. The veteran pharmacist suggests that setting up shop in the main city is the obvious path, but the crown might try to steal the headquarters, a move the nobleman would definitely block. Shortly thereafter, the lord informs his boy that his majesty wants a chat, so pack your bags. The kid whines about fancy manners and begs to stay home instead, yet the parent persists, even if his personal schedule had that trip slated for much later. The kid treats this as a massive loot run to grab ancient secrets and shiny baubles from every single previous conflict. Rolling in a wagon, the boy perches between those two subordinates along with his noble father. Following a 14 Day journey. They pull up to a massive mansion. Our hero remembers the Burn clan is doomed to bankruptcy before the third conflict starts, deciding to ignore them. Some random guy wonders if such trash talk might poison the nobleman's opinion. The big boss says no worries, as every parent ought to back his offspring. Plus even foolish errors won't bankrupt the whole clan. Suddenly, this breathless messenger barged inside to shout how royal guards are outside carrying a very loud demand, which shocks both of them. Inside those regal halls, born snobs get hauled in instantly. As the kid and his father salute the monarch, the boss ignores the stiff bowing, mentioning that rigid etiquette is pointless between such pals. He quips that he likes how that old man stays consistent. That lord jokes that his majesty is also very stubborn, while the ruler wonders if this lad is that famous Sheikh Jim. Our hero pops up, announcing his full title while claiming it feels hugely glorious encountering our nation's honorable king. The monarch sees the boy as a chip off the old block, labeling it the finest praise, which the dad accepts with a smug grin. This host grumbles to start business, intending to pay lad's success with siblings apothecary, mentioning kid performed well and should open shops in city, which triggers long speeches from father, plus granting more locations. This ruler vows to protect them from that weird cult and any haters, though this fight becomes about who sells magical weeds, since Arcane wants to stop rivals and keep guard, while Marquis argues his plague success proves his city needs sheeting shops, leaving both men completely stuck in a stalemate, and our tiny champion realizes he should back his old man. That monarch then looks over, confessing he felt overly impatient for an introduction. Surprisingly, this monarch mentions to that kid that a park exists nearby where the boy might relax, which results in both child and father looking quite stunned. The lad offers much appreciation yet attempts complaining anyway, until our monarch inquires if anybody exists nearby and directs that younger shirted relative be guided toward lawn. Our more clad men arrive, so the boy feels he failed that opportunity to assist Pa, as a soldier points toward grass. Also he intends to keep grinding on blobs while asking for solitary time, which that soldier permits. Amidst the shrubbery, he strolls while a soft azure light leaks from his skin, sensing a massive heap of magic. Brewing tonics successfully enhance corporeal stats, yet the boy lacks battle techniques for using such power besides mixing liquid. Now the mystical glitch is gone. He focuses on shrinking those conjured jellies down further. Inside that brain, the jellies become pebbles, letting him spawn and kill 5 at once, which would double those gains, since squishing blobs is our country's ultimate strength. Suddenly some noise inquires exactly what that boy might be performing. That child jumps before yelling for a name. He spots a rose, mopped lass loitering right there, mutely clutching a wriggling crawler in her palm. Earing the target, attacks, and the maiden inquires about him stroking the creature, but the lad screams a refusal. That girl circles the fellow while investigating him closely, bending close. The princess observes that his face looks just as lovely as a maggot. He claims that is a brand new insult, yet she argues for insect beauty, making him label her a total freak. Pondering for a moment, he remembers those rosy, maned figures from the demonic crusade and awkwardly inquires whether that child represents Serena. The girl agrees, calling herself the royal Serena, supplying that monarch's infant girl, triggering a massive headache objective within the fourth demonic crusade. The boy recalls that monarch suggesting a stroll through those palace weeds, while that girl identifies as 10 before demanding his age. This youth announces the specific personal identity of Ivan Chetan, age 11, being the bottom tier member of his household. Finding the lad senior, the princess utters his title with an unsettling gaze, questioning his reasons for squashing those small pals. Within those paddled, the princess observes the boy, shouting how those prisoners crave rescue, while wondering about his cruelty. Once the youth questions her logic regarding their supposed rescue, she says the screaming has finally stopped, so they must all be totally deceased now. The lad reflects on how devils snatched the girl during that fourth demonic crusade, brainwashing her, which makes him question her true talent. Having spent every moment inside those secure castle walls, the girl likely remained clueless about her knack for animal training. Fabricating a story is pointless, as she already spotted him conjuring those things into existence. Even clarifies that staying alive requires gain power via mass murder, claiming that once he becomes mighty, he will persevere. Then he conjures a gooey beast and murders the thing instantly. The little lady bluntly says his death is forbidden. Following his query, the girl begs for a single survivor, and he checks which specific blob she wants. The youth senses Mirasol's jewelry starting to radiate light within his palm. The girl guarantees zero violence upon release, so the boy proposes visiting that water feature. Then both depart, beside that water display. Our warrior shoves magic inside that accessory for summoning a tiny, radiant lava jelly, while the girl gapes at the spicy new species. The lad presents the blob, confessing he lacks any real authority. The girl gleefully accepts, calling the tiny blob precious. The boy suggests it is hazardous, though she ignores his worry, questioning its lethality while the goo wiggles across her skin. During their chat, the boy notes teaching would suck if every jelly acted so chill, so his companion says most just murder everything on sight like brainless idiots, which justifies their swift execution. Shocked, he wonders about her source, and she coolly mentions Ruby. Having already titled the gelatinous blob, she mentions hearing its weird brain waves, confirming their magical pact is officially signed and sealed. The boy suggests that bonding through quality time will turn the puddle into a loyal bodyguard. She asks if eating worms qualify for this deal, but he claims monsters are the only members allowed. Acknowledging the point, she snuggles Ruby, and once outdoors he tries explaining her powers, yet she keeps obsessing over bug contracts, making his confused response linger in the breeze. At dinner, the Marquis drops the bombshell that the king wants even hitched to the royal brat. His rejection is instantaneous, while the rest of the family chokes on their soup. Dad confirms he already swiped left on the king, but cautions that the old man is persistent. Yvan thinks it is weird, wondering why the crown is thirsty for him despite better noble options. The noble father clarifies that rank is irrelevant, since the sovereign desires the genius behind Brother's pharmacy who ended the epidemic. This makes him even more stubborn, fearing the spotlight will prove he is just a boring background character. He begs his father to tell the king he is way too trashy for royalty. His dad suggests being honest about his true feelings. The boy stalls momentarily, recalling the girl and her slime. Under pressure, she clings to the slime and demands total privacy, claiming her fondness for him matches her love for garden invertebrates. The boy admits she looks decent now, and will likely be a total knockout when she finishes growing, although the other girl remains more attractive. He confesses her vibe is impossible to decipher and staying away seems much less exhausting. Upon being questioned about his stance, he clarifies that another encounter with the girl sounds like a nightmare. The head of the house sighs in relief, admitting he feared Yvan might actually find the girl tolerable, because the king kept yapping about their chemistry, making Yvan feel like a hostage in a royal room. Come. His father mentions a 4-day conference regarding Brother's pharmacy begins tomorrow. Noting the sovereign requested Yvan's presence, the father adds that skipping the trip is fine, offering to take over so Yvan can tour the capital city instead. Suddenly Serena bursts into the room, yelling his name and demanding he join her for playtime. Yvan freezes, turns to face her, then glances at his father, who simply concedes defeat on his previous attempt. Once on the street, Yvan questions why such a valuable princess is wandering around outside the palace walls. Serena casually replies that it is totally fine, since she is accompanied by a pair of extraordinarily powerful guards. He clarifies that his schedule for the date is full, and he cannot join her, but she quickly offers a witty retort, insisting she will join his plans instead. Our protagonist adamantly denies the existence of any worms, then pauses awkwardly before telling the princess to simply use her creative imagination. He turns towards Shine and Blue, instructing them to prepare for departure immediately. Even mentions they need to purchase casual clothing, since they will be traveling anonymously without their uniforms for the following 3 days. Shine questions whether he is part of the plan, even confirms it, and Belua nods in agreement that they will get ready and come back. He clarifies that they are his cherished companions, who became servants because of some unfortunate circumstances, requesting the princess be kind to them. She agrees immediately without any hesitation, and even then confronts her about her exact reasons for being here. Serena explains that she requested permission from the king to spend time with her brother Yvan, which he readily granted. Our boy rapidly questions if she mentioned the incidents from yesterday, and she replies yes. She describes meeting him in the garden, followed by Ruby, and he completely panics when she casually reveals she told her father she likes him as much as worms, adding that her father completely understood the comparison. Yvan immediately worries that this could easily escalate into a forced engagement. Becoming deeply frustrated, he grumbles that he intended for her to be completely free, not tethered to him, while she insists she just told her father she wanted to play. Following a resigned sigh, the protagonist concedes and agrees to join her for playtime. He makes her swear a solemn promise to keep their outing completely secret. Serena beams brightly and readily accepts the condition. Some time later, they arrive at the location known as King Island Sigarji. The shopkeeper immediately offers a warm welcome to Princess Serena, before finally noticing Yvan. Recognizing Yvan Sheridan as a noble figure, Yvan quickly dismisses all decorum and requests the highest quality attire for both Shine and Blue, specifying they should be crafted from premium, high-end fabrics. He inspects the clothing, and verifies that it possesses expandable properties, The shopkeeper clarifies that the items are made from magical materials designed to automatically adjust to physical growth. Serena tilts her head in confusion, asking why they don't simply purchase new clothing instead of using magical ones, and he then explains it allows him to keep outfits attached to important memories. She asks him to clarify if wearing these outfits genuinely creates lasting memories. When he nods his head in agreement, she shyly makes a new suggestion. Intrigued, the lad lifts his eyebrow as the girl suggests a clothing trade, arguing that shared garments preserve special moments. The boy consents. During the grand reveal, Shine emerges from the velvet drapes flaunting his fresh threads. Our main man trails behind rocking a snowy tuxedo featuring gilded embroidery. Her Highness eventually emerges wearing a ruffled rose gown, spinning to demand a fashion critic. Plus the lad says she looks lovely. The boy softly wonders if the girl will actually use that dress right now. After she says yeah, and questions his motive, he dismisses the topic entirely. The lady dips low, offering massive thanks for her gorgeous new apparel, as the princess celebrates how gorgeous her friend looks, shouting that her friend beats even the most handsome earthworms in existence. The merchant expresses gratitude for the visit, mentioning that selecting those costumes was quite delightful. The youngster returns the courtesy and then asks to purchase one more thing, that scarlet coiled piece of fabric, demanding it be packaged with extreme stealth. Even though she clarifies the item is simply an adjustable magic cloth, he demands the package be sealed completely to hide it from any nosy onlookers. Actually, that cloth is a hex trap designed to call forth a giant squid. Our hero thinks about how his mission was finding this magical gear, a literal lie, saving loot drop from his gaming knowledge. Midst shopping, the boy sifts through the shiny trinkets, noting the city boutiques absolutely destroy their local pawn shops. The sidekick insults his ego, so our hero whispers a savage comeback just for him. Shine wonders how his pockets are so deep, assuming the drug shop is lucrative. As Baliwa mentions his wealthy father pays him too, the main dude confesses his bucket list is long, but his stomach demands a snack immediately. Upon their arrival, the squad migrates toward a massive structure that looks like a fortress, and Shine narrows his eyes, questioning if this is a restaurant or just some rich guy house. The boss clarifies the building is a fixed-up manor, and Shine agrees it looks great, but demands the city best service for their royal guests. The guide merely mentions that his desired object is indoors. Once inside, the boss gives Serena a friendly greeting. The other patrons start gossiping, trying to figure out if these fancy folks are from another country. A few locals identify the boy as the Shurden treasure. The boss says they can sit wherever they want, yet the boy demands that isolated chamber upstairs on the right. That shopkeeper pauses briefly, noting that patrons avoid that area since it is totally abandoned. The youngster remains stubborn. As a shiny gold piece flies through the air into his palm, he sprints to ensure the area gets scrubbed and prepared. Featuring the most expensive silverware and porcelain plates available, Tuesday arrives. The kid starts with the broth, thereafter devouring the greens and carbs, following up with fish while saving the steak for a final. Prior to eventually slicing the beef, the leader commands his team to devour sweets and gulp some tea. He detects his pal shivering and questions if the flavor is gross. Shine disagrees and claims the order is okay, but the atmosphere feels like a frozen tundra. An epiphany hits his brain concerning a secret visitor, but Baliwa promises the spirit stays hidden until the plates are licked clean. Just like that, a young female apparition manifests once the surface is empty, as the trio watches her evaporate into the ether. He talks about completing the objective before catching his gainer Lingho, while Serena shoots him a very perplexed and judging gaze. Retaining to speak with his friend, he highlights the spooky entity, explaining they helped her cross over. He remembers that this specific banquet fulfills a hidden achievement. Finishing every meal that the ghost enjoyed provides a unique, lasting upgrade to power levels and talent gains for the entire group. Serena wonders if she dropped any treasure, but he clarifies it was merely a holy purr. Meanwhile, that woman mentions her freshly restored vigor. Chine, still looking like a sheep, asks where the spook went. Plus this main hero confirms her ethereal exit. Only then does the boy ask permission to pass out before hitting the floor. Following those events, within that space, Baliwa sealed the door and announced that she had ensured no unwanted visitors would interrupt them, earning Evan's praise. Evan turned his attention to the table, where a dazzling collection of gems, crystals, and jewelry was laid out before them, with Baliwa and Serena standing close by his side. The young man asked if it was time to calculate the profits from today's successful haul. Starting the tally immediately, Evan counted exactly 32 treasures, expressing his genuine surprise that he had managed to find relics from Demon War 1. Serena carefully examined the items while Baliwa worried aloud about leaving them unguarded. The protagonist assured her by explaining that these artifacts had an inherent durability that made them resistant to damage. The princess questioned why such valuable items were being sold casually in a jewelry store. Picking up a glowing ring, he explained that most people simply couldn't recognize their true nature. He clarified that not all artifacts look like magical items, some will only gaining power gradually over time, while others contain potential that remains dormant without the proper care. He added that certain items only fully awaken their abilities once they bond with an owner or are infused with sufficient mana. Serena mentioned that the royal palace employed a specific mage for handling artifacts, to which he then remarked that commoners could stare all day at these items without recognizing a thing. He noted that doing so in a jewelry store for a prolonged period would probably just get them thrown out. Balua realized the jeweler must have lost a fortune, and even agreed, noting that the seller didn't recognize the true worth of his inventory. When Serena attempted to ask him a follow-up question, he dismissed it quickly as a professional secret. When she persisted, Serena decided to ask if she could simply have one. Even reminded her that constantly asking for things was generally considered poor etiquette, but she countered by offering to get him something valuable from the royal palace in return. He accepted, recognizing the significant value of her offer. He promised to uphold his end of what he called a deal. She immediately clarified that it wasn't a deal, but rather a friendly exchange of gifts. When he told her to choose an artifact, she deferred and asked him to select one for her instead. He picked out a specific necklace, introducing it as the Tigress Glory. He even explained that it was perfect for tamers, significantly improving their success rate, and allowing them to create a protective barrier by infusing it with mana. The princess declared it perfect for her needs, but as soon as she fastened it, the necklace began to pulse with light. The young man noticed this strange reaction and wondered if the item's properties had changed since he last saw it. Serena announced that her knowledge regarding monster taming had suddenly expanded, declaring the necklace perfectly suited for her. Ivan agreed, and she readily accepted his request to hear what he wanted in return. He instructed her to ensure she located and retrieved the desired item from the palace storage, and she smiled as she promised to bring it to him. She jokingly offered to steal her father's ceremonial sword, which he immediately rejected as a terrible idea. Eventually, the girl gets ready for her departure. Serena double-checks if that specific trinket is her only required luggage. Even muses that since the relic looks like junk to others, the monarch will probably call it up without fuss. Voting toward Balua, the master proposes finding a fancy little treat meant specifically for the maid. However, she insists on having zero expectations, and highlights the boy's previous remarks concerning a formal bargain with the royal daughter. He clarifies that this is pure charity, a shiny bribe for being his favorite person. As her eyes meet his gaze, he produces some flashy ear jewelry. These are called volcanic spirit earrings, the boy clarifies, which accelerate energy restoration and boost fiery spells into massive infernos. Balua wonders whether those items match her suspicion, causing the young lord to verify. Noting those items typically arrive alongside the chilly snow mountain sparklers, she refuses the loot, wondering why a lowly subordinate should match the boss's high-tier fashion sense. The boy wonders aloud if the lady intends to decline his offer. The maiden claims to lack sufficient status, but the lad demands she accept his generosity. Being stubborn, he shoves the crimson jewels directly into her unsuspecting hand, encouraging her to complain occasionally rather than acting like a human pressure cooker. Balua cautions regarding how unleashing deep emotions might actually trigger a localized catastrophe. Our main man suggests sparking whenever some annoying thing gets on one's nerves, vowing to resolve every single issue. The woman eventually complies and fastens the ornaments, offering some gratitude. The girl requests he use that cute nickname, the then so forth. By dawn the next day, even announces a scavenger hunt for some defensive plot armor, then ditches those fancy neighborhoods to find sketchy back alleyboutiques concealed throughout the city. Chatting with his buddy, the lad mentions their hectic schedule while wishing the royal girl would vanish quickly. The hero stops and squinty eyes his companion like he just stole a cookie, because the guy looks completely poker-faced. Seeing his state, the master questions the servant regarding his malfunction, recalling his previous collapse despite looking okay back home. The commander quips about his resemblance to a loser who recently got dumped. The servant grumbles about his leaden limbs, making the master doubt the enchantment actually worked on him, stating his physical state improved at once. Shine mentions he likely got the buff though he remains cold, noting his limbs still feel like heavy anchors. A crazy spark of genius strikes the lad. He tosses some shiny silver bangles over instantly, ordering his buddy to put them on. Shine wonders if these are simple jewelry, but Ivan claims they are spirit cuffs that boost agility by 15%. He confesses he hoped to find even cooler loot, though these work great until the 60th level down. Stunned, Shine stammers about floor 60, while the hero notes the best pros only reached 45. Ivan says not to get hooked on the jewelry, as future items must handle both armor and haste. He even checks his condition, so his pal jogs a bit before saying he is speedy yet still feels bogged down. Just during that specific second, some spooky silhouette pops up right in his rear. Ivan gawks with wide eye, shouting to know what on earth his friend just triggered. However, Shine shrugs it away, claiming there is zero to worry about. That phantom servant glides forward, causing both guys to shriek like terrified toddlers. Thinking she had kicked the bucket, she simply says she also expected to die but woke up glued to him. Shine yells for her to beat it, blaming her for his sluggishness, yet she confesses she failed to detach herself. Pondering the mystery, she jokes if he might be dealing with a nasty spiritual haunting, which sends him into a vocal frenzy. The hero recalls she previously muttered about how cozy the surroundings seem to be. Smirking, the spirit says the bangle looks known, adding that it radiates a very pleasant vibe. She begs to hop in, promising it fixes his cold weight, so he screams for her to jump inside. Then she chirps a joyful thanks, neglecting Ivan's loud complaints while she plunges into the shiny silver band. The lead character notes this specific scenario was totally absent from his memories, a scene that never occurred during the fourth demonic conflict when that item debuted. From within, she mentions the stubbornness, making him think the name Spirit Bangle was a literal hint about housing ghosts. He guesses this particular plot point simply did not exist in the digital version, suggesting the pair discovered a fresh hidden system. He questions if the trinket evolved because of her, though Shine claims it looks exactly the same as before, yet even suggests treating it as a win, while Shine argues the scary lady is still haunting him, yet she merely claims that being indoors is her true jam. Some rhythmic thumping on the wood grabs their collective eyeballs, while Balua and Serena barge in to tell the boss they are finally prepared to touch grass. Keeping the itinerary hidden, he tells Shine to put a lid on his annoying curiosity. Serena waltzes up and thrusts a package his way, mentioning it is the bride she promised. A tiny, sharp toothpick resides inside. His eyes nearly roll out when he recognizes the limit breaker, a legendary prize from the final demonic skirmish normally reserved for Royal Brown. No sirs. Serena wonders what that shiny toothpick actually does, so he clarifies it shatters boundaries, but avoids yapping about the boring details for now. He muses that this toy lets him exceed artifact capacity, which is vital since even with armor, he is still squishier than a ripe peach. Carrying a sixth magical trinket is vital. Hoisting the blade, he shouts Limitless to trigger the magic effect. Vibes explode as a shimmering padlock manifests over a vacant gear pocket. Restraints crumble, and the hole pops open, disintegrating into tiny bits. Shine queries the chaos, while Serena watches and ponders if that stabby thing works like that. Even mutters it is quite complex, yet points out his magical backpack just got bigger. She nods before speculating he is hunting for more shiny baubles, a fact he quickly validates. Even looks like a wilted flower. Serena asks why his wallet is still heavy, despite 4 hours of window shopping across town. Arisha suspects her new trinket might have a caffeine muff, then asks which way they should wander next. However, he proposes a snack break nearby, citing a local joint he knows like his own hand. Shine probes for info, but the rich kid tells him to stop using his brain so hard. Upon arrival, the squad halts in front of a massive brick monstrosity. Gain questions his navigation skills, so our hero claims he heard it is a trendy hotspot. That pub known as Emmy's Kicking is a crucial landmark during the 2 subsequent demonic conflicts, a den where allies gather and plot armor thickens, even attracting the Silent Night. Though Shine worries about the booze flow, yet even shrugs it off, reminding him that bodyguards are present, and the sun is still up. Dane agrees it is cool, while Arisha starts sniffing out a different motive for their visit. Seeing the realm's scariest hired swords, the leader tells the rest of the crew to stay watchful in this den of gooms. The squad waltzes inside where he then demands a giant surface plus 7 plates of that spicy kicking meal. Shine scans the joint, noting that buffet dudes are everywhere, which our boy confirms, mentioning this being where the nation's seated at the booth. Baloo wonders the reason they picked such a sketchy, hazard-filled diner. Our leader confesses he enjoys hunting for some legendary buried bounty, although deep down he realizes the prize is actually a living human being. Covering the girl regarding those sentries, the boy nonchalantly drops that cute little pet name, which causes Shine to twitch uncontrollably from the shock. Serena mimics the title and begs to use that adorable moniker herself, although Lua kindly says no, making the royal brat pout while Shine and our hero observe the drama. That grub appears, steaming dishes of the spicy kicking meal, and he beckons every person, including watchmen, to begin chomping. Those sentries show much appreciation. Shine begins shoveling, and Lua tries a careful mouthful. Our boy peeks around, hunting for recognizable faces from that old Demon War franchise. Mid-munching, a mysterious fellow grabs his focus, as our protagonist's eyeballs glue themselves to a random bloke by the counter whose yellow locks and flowy cape initially imply he is a cleric. Another glance shows metal plating underneath, and he then spots that dude known as Ryan Drukes, the famously indestructible barrier. Scandalous during that fourth sequel regarding insane tanking skills and constant cell mending over the floor. Ryan chills at the counter. Blustain's focus shifts toward that fellow, recognizing a legend whose reputation rings bells for hired swords, as the boss spills Ryan's history, clarifying that despite being a god-gifted kid, he picked the life of a sacred warrior instead of a boring preacher. He mentions that being too scrawny caused his failure, offering choices to either quit the blade or wait 10 years for another trial. Once he flopped, he turned to cheat booze. The protagonist stores these juicy teas. Since Serena shoves him ahead, the boy strolls toward the counter, his clunky boots catching Ryan's eye. That armored fellow pivots around, while offering a frosty, dull-faced glare, so our hero chirps a hello at Ryan, while begging to pull up a chair. He even settles next to Ryan, and his pupils basically explode upon hearing such a famous moniker. That guy jolts upright, wondering why a literal VIP would bother chilling beside a total nobody. This lad muses as to why a hopeful paladin commander is presently soaking his liver in this dumb. Ryan thumps the mug, while reminiscing about the oath he swore when the Almighty granted him special powers. He planned to join the Shiny Brigade, brawl in battles, and score divine points during his prayers. In confession, Ryan notes he learned from some broke foreign noble, posting high energy, but zero wizard skills, which basically made him prime candidate for the clergy life. After playing bodyguard, he got a holy buff and decided to trade robes for heavy metal armor. Even with endless practice, every single pointy stick he touched felt totally wrong in his hands. He confesses he sucks at swinging stuff and brawling, making his teachers facepalm every single training day. The entire peanut gallery hollered for that fellow to quit, but he simply remained stubborn, claiming his divine juice was for shielding folks, not just waving sparkly bandages from the safe zone. Feeling nosy, our main man abruptly inquires what that weird special ability is actually named. Ryan clarifies how this power represents the martyr's mercy, something designed strictly for selfless souls, which compels baddies to bash that man's head rather than his friends, permanently. The fellow mentions the taunt gets way beefier whenever he releases a saintly warrior scream, even nods, admitting that it sounds like the ultimate kit for a professional human shield dude. Ryan sighs, moaning that he lacks any actual punching power, feeling like a total disappointment of a man. Our hero grills him about how exactly that fellow rescued those folks back when he got his gift, pointing out that his whole vibe is about keeping people safe, not just snacking goblins. Ryan confesses he just baited the beasts and sprinted like a track star until they were lost. He finds his own actions pathetic. He then shuts him down and claims fleeing is actually pretty metal. He argues that while pros brawling is expected, a pacifist charging into danger shows some serious brass balls. Though skeptical, Ryan listens closely while our friend dubs that dude the true legend of guarding civilians despite understanding his gift was never intended for brawling, confessing nobody has previously offered that warrior such praise. Our lead hopes the big guy will finally announce his destiny as a legendary shiny armor lad. Upon being queried if his mood has improved, Ryan grunts about feeling slightly less like a pile of trash, maybe. Even swears the man might evolve into a legendary crusader, while insisting he truly trusts that vision. Instead, Ryan waggles his noggin, while clarifying how the whole night thing is totally old news now. The boy felt flabbergasted. Ryan explains he officially stopped giving a hoot regarding what people whisper, since even helped him decide he will chase his dreams and keep folks safe, ignoring any spicy shade from the local haters. The kid figures this whole mess actually ended up quite nicely. Feeling determined, our hero struts up and repeats his name as Ivendi once again. He is the younger son of Lord Solon, ruler of that certain dungeon town. The guy says he hails from that Drukes line, those dudes who blocked Dread and Fire, named Ryan. He gives even props for hearing him out, which gave him guts to proceed. Our hero ponders how the big guy upstairs likely had reasons for buffing Ryan. Finally, the lad notes he won't inherit the lordship, so he will start his own gang of fighters later. Reaching out, he asks to recruit Ryan for his upcoming squad of warriors. The man possesses the actual muscles needed to keep people from getting squished. More importantly, he has the heart, so they should team up to save town. Ryan says the job is way too fancy for a guy like himself. He notes that since Ivan knows he is a mess, he will try hard. The pair grip hands, and the hero confirms the dude is officially in. When boxes pop, shiny coins and magical trinkets explode all over the floor. The boss asks what on earth is happening right now. The kid says he found that loot randomly, so he will use it for paying nights. Then he shows Ryan to his father, mentioning he grabbed him in the main city. The lad tells the father he plans to work as a dungeon knight with the kid very soon. He asks the boss to use the magic loot to rescue his friend from that Great Order cult. The old man chuckles and says the cash for Ryan is already set. And just like that, the city errands are finally all wrapped up. The lad mentions Eva and grabs cool gear and can carry more items now. Plus he recruits Ryan Drukas for his upcoming warrior squad. Outside, the princess pouts that Ivan should stay, since her dad lets her leave when he is around. He says he has to go back home and might never see the capital again. The girl sighs as if they might never cross paths again. Basically, text, end. The lad notes their paths split because the big boss trashed the wedding deal. Yet the girl stubbornly swears a reunion is inevitable. Our leader scolds the girl for blabbering about such impossible dreams, noting a fancy jewel like her shouldn't stroll alone, mostly because the outside world is basically a giant dumpster fire. Then she needs some serious muscles to avoid becoming monster snacks. The girl treats his lecture like a power out, vowing to buff her stats until she can barge into his elite club. Our main guy groans, suggesting she can play hero however she likes, provided she actually survives the training. The girl swears it shall happen. Plus she requests that their next awkward encounter involves him using her cute little nickname, Ray. While traveling, those clunky horse weapons put some distance between them and the urban center. Ryan jokes that their boss is basically a magnet for every disaster imaginable. His partner nods, claiming a whole conga line of trouble is likely lurking. Ryan equates his cheat code knowledge to a fancy prize, musing that these constant assassination attempts are just the tax for it. His companion exhales deeply, claiming the boss's heartbeat matters more than some hole in the ground, because a dead leader means no paycheck. Ryan swears he will swing his sharp metal stick whenever things get dicey. However, he even mentions that Ryan's sword skills are roughly as sharp as a potato. The clumsy subordinate confesses he let his bravery blind him to the fact he is quite uncoordinated. Our lead explains that while Ryan fights like a wet noodle, he still has some value. Confidently, our lead insists the guy's real gimmick involves being a human wall, explaining why the heavens granted him such strange powers. Ryan wonders how a guy who trips over his own feet can actually defend anyone. The solution is easy. He should ditch the blade and grab a tool that actually suits his goofy abilities. The clumsy lad finally understands, wondering if a massive plate is the answer. The boss agrees, noting that during that one beastly scrap, Ryan basically discovered his destiny as a professional punching bag. Our hero explains that Ryan just needs to act annoying so monsters hit him instead of the others. He questions if there is any role more glorious than being a sturdy wall. He teases Ryan for burying those memories, and the guy admits he felt silly. Even if the plan actually works, the leader suggests that having a squad makes this goofy plan viable, claiming that Ryan's specific brand of chaos is perfect during team-based beatdowns, which makes the warrior realize his old pride was just a sad little joke. The clumsy fighter finally accepts that swinging sharp toys isn't the only path to victory. Watching the kid, the man claims the ordeal has transformed into a prestigious mental trophy. He swears to master the art of the board, arguing that guarding pals makes him yearn for some epic team brawls. The hero suggests he just sits back and takes the hits, letting the violent folks handle the actual stabbing. He envisions a squad featuring Shine the Human Wall, Rayhan the Quiet Tin Can, and Balua the Scary Crimson Sorceress, bonded as a terrifyingly powerful pack. Ryan asks if the boss plans to actually punch things himself. He believes being the big boss makes joining it mandatory, though Shine doubts putting such a precious neck on the line. While Balua insists the commander should probably just stay pretty and avoid any physical exertion whatsoever. Offering gratitude, he clarifies that he must absolutely wander into that dark hole regardless of the danger, promising he will cheer from the sideline, while tossing some useful items to help. He mentions taking potion lessons from old BunRv, which shocks Ryan since that magic is basically extinct, though even credits his luck in finding a cranky genius, pledging to hang back and help, as Shine and Balua swear to protect their delicate leader like a treasure. Arriving at the spot, the wagons enter Steenma, a town known for hot baths. Shine confesses he is a bathhouse virgin, and Balua shyly admits she is in the same boat. Ryan adds he has never visited a communal soup bowl either. Plus this marks the very first soaking adventure for Ivan in his current incarnation. The noble asks if the lad can handle being boiled alive, but the kid retorts that scorching temperatures are actually fantastic for melting away the stress. He wouldn't pass up this watery luxury while heading back from the big sea. The Marquis notes that boiling water hates everyone equally, unlike judgmental high society types. However, he mentions that plumbing still dictates the rules, directing Balua toward the lady side of the pool, causing her to snap back and demand that Shine shut his trap immediately. Inside the lodging, the whole crew shows up, and the young master walks right in, spotting Shine and Ryan organizing luggage. Our leader checks if they completed chores, as Shine questions his arrival since the lad should be boiling with the high noble. but Ivan says he chose a nap instead. Shine then wonders if they are going to raid a local monster basement soon, assuming that is the reason for the delay, though Ivan scoffs, and says the boy is still too punny for that. Shine asks why the topic even came up, and Ivan promises they will see action when they grow up. Ryan mentioned how a tiny trio of massive monster pits on Earth allow metropolitan zones to flourish nearby. Classy sheet-on fabric varieties, those singular Faraday routes within enchanted realms, plus trading zones within Bibuka and Murden. Aside from those, various tiny or average monster pits exist, yet solely the metropolitan behemoths grant mortals experience points for surviving their trials. Upon questioning, the boy investigates this cavern. Then his companion clarifies the path stays closed because the danger level remains extreme for rookies, although professionals sweep it often, ensuring beasts do not wander into the city streets. Ancient relics might manifest. Maybe pieces of the cavern itself transform into enchanted gear. Shine questions whether their current plan involves acquiring a fancy manor house. The main character vows to retrieve a thermal fountain and establish a fresh one within their town, floating within thermal waters. The young lad hovers near the rim alongside his friend, questioning the safety of the scalding liquid, though the main character points toward the folks currently enjoying their soap, including their own patriarch. Though Shine whines about his fragile demigod status being way too squishy for this, even snatches his claw, suggests he embrace his watery demise, and boots him straight into the deep end. The celestial youth plummets, screaming and flailing like a panicked fish. Once those splashes conclude, the boy moans about high temperatures before finally becoming warm jelly, subsequently admitting it feels heavenly, an opinion our protagonist heartily shares. While marinating, Shine wonders if these suds actually possess any legitimate restorative properties, even clarifies this beats standard spells, which basically just act like a dose of magical ibuprofen, because this bath mends old wounds and grants muscles a permanent power boost for the future. Rian commends his wisdom, noting that ancient warriors used steam for intensive training sessions long ago. Shine whispers a query, asking if the water can accelerate talent growth after a heavy workout. The protagonist beams and pivots, inquiring whether the boy still desires a private thermal bath following this experience. Plus Shine nods excitedly. Afterward, the trio emerges wearing identical, cerulean, colored loungewear sets. The hero recognizes these garments from the RP, mentioning that developers swapped the initial Japanese look for generic Eastern styles later. Our protagonist contemplates this alien world's heritage, realizing the local fashion definitely lacks any historical connection to our home planet. Rian notes the outfits resemble his home country's festive gear, wondering if the city creators shared his ancestors' bloodline. Even feels genuinely shocked finding a person who actually recognizes the peculiar origins of these antique threads. Shortly thereafter, Lua appears, and queries his discovery of the steaming baths, and he offers answers. Lua enters and approaches him exactly when a snowy-haired lad charges ahead like a caffeinated squirrel. The kid shoves inward and brags regarding his prestige, announcing his name as Crow von Ferretti, noble hair. Even remembers him as the solitary background character who spills his life story without even being asked first, a vital supporting figure, and the firstborn child of a legendary sovereign clan. Facing opposition, Crow furiously barks to discover which person dared utter his entire grand title aloud, but he turns into a popsicle upon spotting the intimidating Marquis Soling D. Sheridan. The boy rapidly begs pardon, swearing that the young lady committed zero mistakes. He argues that his interrogation was merely a byproduct of her being distractingly gorgeous today. Our hero recollects that this annoying brat eventually transforms into a powerful wizardly blade master, and concludes that letting his old man deal with this mess avoids personal social suicide. Just then, the Marquis admits Balua is quite stunning, yet he squeezes Crow's arm and asks if he pouted her, which the boy rejects immediately. Balua says sorry for the disarray, while even comforts her gently, and mentions she looks enchanting, winning a grateful grin. Lastly, the Marquis presents Ivan as his silver, fatal child born second in line, causing Crow to gape, while our protagonist bows courteously and identifies himself as the Sheridan family's second heir. The blonde boy subsequently questions whether that girl is a servant the hero maintains exclusively. He even verifies hiring her on his own, wondering if the wealthy youth remains busy with her. The teenager confesses he does, labeling her the most stunning female he has ever encountered. He faces the Marquis to gutsily request a sanctioned brawl against Ivan to win the girl's hand. As it starts, Crow von Ferry aims a finger at Ivan and demands combat for her affection. Our main character ponders if this dude is trapped in a medieval time loop. Marquis Sheridan finds this hilarious, calling Crow a paragon of masculinity. As the rival begins his monologue, the Marquis interrupts him and shifts his stance, allowing the fight and ordering his kid to engage. The hero yells in total shock and questions why his dad would suggest such nonsense. He hacks along and declines, stating Balua is no trophy and brawling over her is stupid. Instantly the rival named Crow flips his deal, proposing her liberty upon his victory. Before seeing if she fancies employment, our hero admits that Angle escaped his brain and nods, resolving to honor whatever the lady actually wants for once. The noble intervenes, forbidding the use of both steel and magic, permitting just old-fashioned fist fighting, a restriction the challenger accepts with total swagger. The Lord orders an immediate start, thereafter muttering that his own son should hold back, since the opponent lacks a fancy commander badge. Right when the scrap begins, young Yihun advances to meet his foe, stipulating they both promise not to be salty babies later, which the guy quickly signs onto. The main hero stomps his boot down, assuming a serious fighting posture, while that fellow ran. Below with China observed the struggle now. The rival ignites a sapphire glow while charging ahead like a runaway lawnmower, picking up the pace and eating up the distance with a sudden zoom. Our lad chooses to sidestep to test out his own reflexes. Once the punch whiffs the air, he glides away smoothly, spies a gap, while delivering a solid strike that sends the rival flying, tumbling backward in a violent rush, making the loser a rug on tiles. Shocked by the results, he even asks what occurred. So Shine clarifies that fists usually hurt people. Remaining skeptical, the youngster demands more details until Shine spells out exactly how physics works, where the head noble announces the true victor. Afterward, the hero remembers the history of his fallen foe, recalling the years spent studying spells and blades, since diapers, a miss that really should have made him suck less. He figures the suckage results from prioritizing wizardry instead of learning to throw hands. He chuckles, mentioning how lucky it was that they banned all that glowing sparkly stuff. The father claims the win was pure strength, yet his son argues the loser has superior sorcery skills. Such modesty earns him a round of applause from the old man. Rian along with Shine gossip about how the boy ignores his own scary power. As the Lady Belua approaches to applaud his fighting, the girl provides the small ray, explaining it was brought along to scrub away any potential moisture. But the scuffle wrapped up faster than a microwave pizza. Our protagonist expresses gratitude. Meanwhile, Rian's sparkly medicine vibes snap Crow awake, causing him to leap like a caffeinated frog, earning some serious kudos from our main hero for such wizardry. Boast, brawl, the salty loser finally confesses he lost. The hero compliments the kid's fancy footwork, mostly claiming his victory was just lucky ring and a few strict match regulations. Pro nods, but swears he was totally lagging, demanding a proper rematch later where he can actually unleash his full N9 power. Even refuses, stating he has zero reason to rumble again. Nevertheless, the stubborn brat promises to haunt him once his power level finally hits over 9,000. Looking back, Even realizes he gambled his neck on a whim, accidentally getting sucked into the Ferretti family drama like a moth to a very wealthy flame. Shine volunteers to drop Kit Crow if he returns, suggesting Even should not waste his precious brain cells on it, which earns him a friendly nod. Right about then, Marcus spots the big boss Malthor lurking nearby and figures it is time for some polite networking. He orders the squad to chill for a bit while dragging his boy along for the social awkwardness. The lad moans, yet his dad refuses to budge, lecturing him that fancy nobles must play nice with others to keep the planet from exploding. He understands, yet truly loathes the Ferretti family drama. Upon meeting, Malthor gives the Marquis a welcome that is surprisingly toasty, while the Marquis confirms he is currently avoiding the Reaper quite successfully, then buttering up Lady Ferretti regarding her looks, which she accepts with a push smile. Then she eyeballs our main man, gushing over his glow-up, and wondering if he still recognizes her face. He offers a civil reply about having a hazy memory, attempting a formal bow before she demands he just use her married name. His father mentions the lad snagged his specific facial features, while the lady crunches the numbers on his age, realizing he and her girl Alicia are basically twins, summoning the girl. So Alicia starts walking over with some serious grace. The girl gives the Lord a hello. Meanwhile, Even recalls she was the source of all his past misery without actually pulling the trigger, while Marquis praises her beauty, receiving some gratitude. Malthor brings up an old pact, but Marquis smirks, explaining that since the firstborn inherits the crown, they are totally off the hook, reminding him the deal only involved the backup children, and Malthor laughs, teasing the boy for his bashful attitude. Amidst the meet and greet, Alicia delivers a stiff greeting. Even nervously stammers out his entire title, trading stiff pleasantries like a malfunctioning robot. He identifies the lady as Alicia von Foray, his future ball and chain. Their upcoming nuptials forced her to reside in Shurton temporarily. She eventually ditches her groom to shower some main character with ridiculous amounts of support. This heartbreak causes the poor guy to end it all, making her his most efficient killer. The man confesses to being a total player, while already having a ring on someone. However, if the script stays true, Alicia is basically a walking funeral invitation for him. Their elders gawk at the couple, claiming destiny brought these two photogenic youngsters together. That night, the Marquis inquires about the bath, and even praises the delightful soaking experience. He notes the liquid feels suspiciously addictive while recalling a very specific pathway where he prunes up and kicks the bucket from over, soaking. Upon his pups proposing a post-meal dip, he gives a thumbs up, yet he suggests constructing a similar stamiosis within their personal municipality instead. Once the concept is mentioned, the old man agrees a local spa would kick butt, but warns that finding the perfect geological spot is basically a pipe dream. Heating some water is easy, yet genuine magic tubs require more than just a campfire. The kid nods at the wisdom and starts grilling him about land layouts, how the earth shifts when monster pits spawn, seeking the juicy details. The Marquis notes his fascination and elaborates how whenever legendary relics warp reality or if a specific core manifests, some absolute unit of a wizard can also manually remodel the terrain into a creepy crawl space, even if the actual physics behind it are totally mind-boggling. The lad wonders if they could just use a legendary artifact to craft a tub. Dad mulls over the wacky concept, remarking how success is possible should the relic mirror those properties. Although the duration remains unpredictable, he argues that a medicinal pool would make dungeon runs much faster for heroes. Though his pops smells something fishy, the Marquis questions whether the boy is already plotting something. Under the moonlight, laborers excavate soil, while the kid stares them down, while a laborer wonders if they are actually digging in the correct place. He nods, clarifying how some shiny treasure is hiding right next to the pit. Folks wonder who started the juicy gossip, but they get cut off. Rian shouts like a maniac, declaring he stumbled upon a shiny treasure. Deep within the dusty hole, a massive rock tablet is finally exposed. The lad reappears after a long month, and the conversation promptly pivots to his wacky plan for a spot empire. Dad orders Eric to pay attention. While the master scheme unfolds, he stresses that geography is king, plopping the spa by the dungeon, near the pill shop, and right on the main drag. They need a huge footprint, because tiny outlets suck, making a giant sauna mandatory, while entry prices will be quite steep, reflecting its massive scale and charm. During the talk, Marcus notes that if the Bros apothecary serves regular plaids, the Bros bathhouse is for wealthy dungeon dovers. Even argues the magical soak justifies the cost, because quick healing means faster monster hunting. Eric chips in that urban growth will skyrocket, praising the strategy as a total masterstroke. He ponders if the church will get cranky, since the water fixes broken bones. Our hero says they are best buddies with the clergy, so even priests will visit, secretly. He bets this place beats those legendary baths from Hell Battle 3, having magical baths around makes staying alive easier. And he notes that old Bernard is here, to supercharge the liquid with science. Bernard arrives, ordering the boy to move his paws, while griping that he expected something better from the capital than a fancy bathtub. He asks if that rock is it, and our lad agrees. He lets Bernard explain this rock fragment alters the weather, but cannot spawn monsters. Even nods, stating it would be selfish to keep such a refreshing soak private, and asks Bernard his opinion on tubs. While Eric claims the old man is a master of curing the sniffles, the alchemist checks the boulder, deciding that modifying its core is totally out. He mentions the stone acts as a battery, making the warm water extra bubbly. He explains that botanical science and magic will manage the rest, promising with total confidence to build a spring that beats Stanmus touts. He requests a lifetime of free baths for his staff, which Ivan gladly permits. He then begs Dad for some property nearby to build a gym for the soldiers. The boss asks for a reason, so Ivan explains that sweaty warriors need showers. Dad shouts that the plan is genius. Our youth believes the steam will buff his guards, keeping him safe and sound. Bernard wasted no time, suggesting they dive into the project, and Ivan enthusiastically offered his assistance, practically vibrating with eagerness. The construction area buzzed with activity as laborers lugged lumber and pounded away at the skeletal structure. Meanwhile, Ivan directed the careful placement of materials. A couple of workers hauled a massive joist right past a pillar that was clearly labeled with mystical symbols. Indoors, Bernard scrutinized the magical engine. He cautioned that the current mana stone wasn't strong enough for the full facility, to which he even countered that the goal was complete functionality from day one. Bernard emphasized the necessity of a proper base, then immediately interjected again to point out that the present configuration would surely fail. He explained that a single supplemental artifact must accompany the primary mana stone. Bernard detailed the requirements for a mana aggregate, a device capable of providing unlimited energy to keep the core operations running perpetually. He firmly stated that a minimum of 5 units were required, Our young hero immediately recognized this as the mini-tank method, which caught Bernard completely off guard. Bernard conceded the point about increased efficiency, but lamented having sold off his previous artifacts. Even inquired about the item's current location, leading Bernard to confess they had disappeared entirely. The young man then pulled several artifacts out of his own inventory. He declared that the ones he procured from the capital would serve the purpose. Bernard narrowed his eyes, wondering if the young master had looted the royal vault during his trip. Our protagonist insisted he had gathered them from various merchants throughout the city, mostly from a certain jeweler. Finally, Bernard agreed that the items were suitable, prompting Ivan to volunteer his assistance, viewing the task as an ideal exercise in practical alchemy. Afterward, while Ivan was in the training area, the knight captain came over to talk. He advised Ivan against letting his combat training fall behind, emphasizing that this particular time was critical for physical development, which Ivan accepted. However, the knight mentioned the gossip concerning Ivan's recent duel with the Ferretti heir, observing that the young master had gained notoriety in martial arts, and would consequently attract many more rivals. Ivan casually dismissed the notion, claiming he hadn't done anything impressive. The knight, however, was convinced of the opposite, and volunteered to impart a dungeon forge technique specifically for protecting Ivan's standing. He wasted no time in unveiling the martial art technique, called Heaven's Way, designed explicitly to dominate the area of combat. Before his very gaze, Ivan observed as power accumulated in the captain's fist, while the knight's entire body enveloped itself in a dense, whirling energy field. He began explaining the skill's purpose. So every wiggle feels heavier than my student loans. The boss claims the kid works smarter, while our boy wonders if this logic is actually contagious, or just magic. Yet that leader ghosted those feelings plus dashed ahead, making the lad wiggle like a panicked jelly bean to survive. Later, the hero face plants onto some wood before Mabel waltzes in to declare that fancy pinky of training begins. That lad begs for some quick rest. However, that girl mentioned Shine received wrist bling plus Balua scored ear jewelry, whereas her own pockets stayed empty. He swears his memory is top tier, simply lacked the perfect vibe. Even presents a shiny neck chain, ordering that lady to sport the gift as the pharmacy's mascot plus his official substitute. She grins like a lottery winner, and hugs the metal, swearing to never lose it, probably. And, while the guy acts casual, that girl giggles knowingly. Throughout the following weeks, Fancy Manners School ruins the kids' early mornings. Fixing weird potions where those tubs are built ruins the guy's sunny afternoon. Plus heavy lifting drills with the boss destroys his leisure hours while he keeps squeezing those blobs. Those tiny jelly monsters hover between his palms. Plus Ivan beams because 4 popped out together. Even if that internal battery is dying fast, he flops onto the lawn, then drags his carcass upright, acknowledging that time is ticking loudly, because that sibling spa project seems nearly finished. While sparring, the boss commands Ivan to punch like he means it, which he does, earning some rare head pats. He clarifies that being chunky is the secret to this defying gravity move, because after the lad gets used to that load, he can pump energy into those knuckles for extra spacey hits, labeling him a fight prodigy. The leader confesses he originally thought this lesson was a total shot in the dark. The kid whines that being unsure is a pretty lame reason. Plus Baliwa arrives holding a drying cloth, a gift he grabs with appreciation. Today, the sibling-owned clean dungeon finally reveals its grand opening. As the fancy lord critiques that architecture, this hero notices Stimus' aesthetic felt rather Eastern. The boy clarifies why he opted for a rather Occidental vibe instead. Shine's gaze locked onto a strange device, something unusual that immediately piqued his interest. When they finally walked up to the strange dispenser, Ivan provided the instructions for operation, starting with placing a silver coin inside. Next, choosing a refreshing beverage, followed by pushing the selection button, and finally retrieving the resulting item. He demonstrated by choosing coffee milk, which clunked down into the tray, prompting Shine to try it too. Continuing his sales pitch, he explained the construction, mentioning space, expanding artifacts, and cooling spells that power these custom dispensers in both changing facilities. Bernard reminisced about the utter nightmare of assembling and fine-tuning the complicated contraption. He grumbled that the flavor better live up to the excitement. Yet Ivan stayed confident and promised absolute satisfaction. Shine likened the powerful heat to the legendary warmth found in Stamus' famed geothermal springs. He clarified they had deployed a massive artifact in the soaking tubs to boost the hot spring water's effects while simultaneously purifying it. Bernard added that herbal concentrates are regularly blended into the liquid to make it even more potent. He then mentioned that the vending machine itself was actually the protagonist's original brainchild. Marquis firmly declared that this entire venture would be a massive hit. Shine wondered aloud if Boliwa and the ladies would approve, prompting Rayon to reassure him with a simple yes. Bernard turned to Ivan, questioning whether he felt satisfied with the results. Ivan responded that sales were guaranteed, but the old alchemist noted a single issue, making Ivan immediately inquire about the drawback. Just then, Mibbles suddenly materialized right at the bathhouse entrance. The crowd began to protest loudly, arguing that a single silver coin was typically enough for an entire dinner. Others shouted that nobody would attend at such a high cost, dismissing the whole idea as absolute foolishness. As the complaints grew louder, one explorer demanded the entry price be reduced, while another suggested they simply boycott it, leading to a chant of "We want to go." Witnessing the growing public anger, Mibble tried to get Ivan's attention, but he calmly assured her there was no need for alarm. She then turned to greet the customer, who dropped a heavy pouch of currency onto the counter. Ivan explained that certain explorers in the city regularly shelled out a gold coin just for quick transport to the dungeon's 30th level. He pointed out that paying 20 silver coins for the bathhouse experience would yield results that were truly self-evident. Inside the bath, one adventurer complained that the cost was insane, while another immediately felt his stamina quickly restored by the fresh herbs. A different bather claimed it felt like his spirit was being cleansed, loudly proclaiming the experience was worth every single coin. A rather large gentleman stood submerged in the warm, steaming liquid. He issued a new decree to the guild. Adventurers who failed to cleanse themselves at the brothers' bathhouse before a dungeon foray would be summarily denied entry. Ivan believed this new mandate dramatically improved overall efficiency. Inside the steaming room, one man scooped up the water, declaring it a true miracle, while another announced that God must have created it specifically to purify their souls. Ivan concluded it would only take time before everyone finally admitted the brothers' spa was absolutely worth the 20 silver coin price tag. He added that once word got around, even pinching explorers would eventually try it at least once, just to see what the fuss was about. Our boy clarified that the bathhouse offered benefits far beyond simply alleviating muscle soreness. He explained that it fundamentally revitalized the body, making subsequent dungeon exploration significantly less perilous. Ivan stressed that it accelerated growth considerably, predicting a huge gap would open between users and non-users, with the latter group inevitably facing elimination. Two explorers lounged in the warm pool, lavishing praise on the establishment. One called it amazing, and wondered if 20 silver coins actually covered the expense, while the other called it a divine blessing. At the dungeon entrance, the guild leader paused to check if everyone in the party had completed their visit to the brothers' bathhouse. The entire group bellowed back in affirmation, fired up and eager to reach the 40th floor. They were determined to catch up to the frontline adventurers. The Yellow Drake Guild charged forward, as nearby spectators murmured about wanting to join them. One person explained that high society nobles and everyday commoners used the facility. Before every raid, they expressed gratitude toward the Marquis' new regulation. Others present also made a quiet promise to visit once they gained more power. Even observed seasoned explorers raiding with much greater effectiveness, all thanks to the bathhouse. Even new adventurers were training harder now, dreaming of the day they could eventually try it. With a hefty fee and exclusive beverages enhancing its prestige, access became a privilege reserved for high-ranking explorers. Later, the Marquis reviewed stacks of reports. He observed that everything was proceeding exactly as Ivan had envisioned, with profits skyrocketing. He calculated that the net revenue from the bathhouse actually surpassed the combined total from all four of the brothers' pharmacy branches, which was fantastic for high-level adventurers. He considered it even more beneficial for lower-tier adventurers and slum residents who couldn't afford proper healing from priests. Since the pharmacy served a completely different clientele, the huge disparity in revenue was completely expected. He also noted that the initial investment poured into the bathhouse significantly outstripped the money spent on all the pharmacies. The Marquis explained that the substantial expenses for the project were covered entirely from his own funds. Recalling the vassal's previous fury, a heated discussion began in the Marquis' study, where a man slammed his fist on the desk. He claimed they weren't allowed to invest, accusing bias, because Ivan was running the project. He insisted on his loyalty but demanded answers, only to be firmly told to calm down. The Marquis clarified that he himself never invested in the bathhouse, and had only accepted funding from others when resources were scarce. The conversation shifted to pharmacy profits, revealing that Ivan had actually contributed both his personal expertise and his own cash. The fellow recoils, looking completely flabbergasted, claiming such thoughts evaporated. Even jokes that certain subordinates have gold coins for eyeballs. Just then, he singles out Randolph to represent the pinnacle of stinginess. Marquis swears the spot is Ivan's private kingdom, strictly off limits to peasants. He notes that Avarice tracks gold like a bloodhound, yet applauds the kid's growth, while exhaling a regretful breath. He worries the youth is tackling far too much. The main guy insists that everything is totally under control. internally muttering how each specific maneuver he performs keeps him from the grave. Later, that boy adjusts the costs, while revealing a fresh master strategy, an exclusive VIP club based on how many monsters you po. He displays flashy loyalty cards, explaining that shiny plastic motivates lazy folks to boost the spot in the town. Mabel observes this might light fires under people, which Evan confirms. He mentions this strategy builds a society not tethered to one lucky savior. Eventually, Mabel confesses her confusion, yet claims he is basically worth his weight in gold. That lady claims the municipality would perish without his presence, labeling him an essential local asset. That lad declines to expire or observe the town falling to pieces, understanding that betting on a single protagonist usually ends in total catastrophe. That kid swears to construct a system for autonomous municipal growth, ensuring the place survives while he stays breathing. Within the medicine shop, Evan displays sparkly rocks, fancy juices, and metal bars, calling them his science project. The grubby master scrutinizes a stone, admitting the kid has truly improved. The kid teases about taking over the night shift, earning a grumpy, sharp comeback, as Hannah eavesdrops quietly. Outdoors, the elderly potion master sends workers home with a pat on the back. A pair of staff members suggest a so, and he enthusiastically agrees. Hannah also requests the main dude's presence, so he follows their lead. Arriving at the steam room, he meets a couple of dudes. They are marinating in hot water, stating their exercise routine just wrapped up. Shine clarifies he finished cramming for the classes he skipped while visiting the big city. Even checked in with Ryan, who confessed he was lagging behind, but soaking up knowledge from Shine like a sponge. The swordsman added that the Holy Knight's curriculum was clearly designed for a genius, and he had a long way to go. Ryan explained that he was strong, a real beefcake, but he had missed out on the fundamentals of proper fighting techniques. The young master told him to quit overthinking it, suggesting Ryan's unique learning curve simply meant he was progressing differently. He added that all Ryan needed was to fill in the gaps, suggesting a versatile solution like mastering shield combat. The trainee's eyes widened, finally connecting the dots. The alchemist confirmed that his new shield training regimen would start tomorrow, as he had already prepared the materials. As Evan departed, a distinct voice suddenly called out his name, stopping him in his tracks. He turned to find Serena and Hannah approaching. Both girls greeted him warmly after what seemed like ages apart. He returned Serena's greeting, curious about her frequent visits. She confirmed that she did. He acknowledged the relaxing benefits of the hot springs, but warned her that drinking beer would totally ruin the effect. She then inquired about the identity of his new bodyguard. Ryan gave a stiff, formal introduction, explaining he was undergoing rigorous training to stand proudly next to his master. Hannah mentioned that she had secured a job at the local apothecary. Serena added that she was busy working at the temple. Later, during training, our protagonist unveiled a giant shield he had dug out of the dusty storage room. Ryan thanked him profusely, vowing that this massive piece of metal would be his new tool for protection. Our boy shook his head emphatically, shooting down Ryan's declaration. He clarified that the shield was, to put it mildly, garbage, and warned Ryan to only practice with it, never using it in an actual fight. Ryan immediately complained, wondering why he hadn't received this vital information sooner. Evan added that they would both instantly perish if Ryan attempted to block anything with it, which confused Ryan. Evan asked if Ryan had heard of cursed artifacts, which caused a strong reaction, explaining that these items actually exist, and weaken their user. Ryan nervously inquired if this specific shield fell into that category. Evan shook his head in response. Evan said that many perfectly good items get thrown away after being misidentified as cursed, but this particular shield was different. He, of course, recognized its true value from the game's item description. Our protagonist admitted that evaluating artifacts in reality was a far less certain business than in a video game. Ryan urged him for an explanation, demanding to know the shield's actual capabilities. Evan replied that if Ryan used its special Echo Shield ability to block an incoming attack, the enemy would instantly feel the impact double. Ryan immediately blurted out that whatever it was, it sounded less like a helpful tool and more like a cursed object. Evan clarified that every successful block registered as 2 successful blocks, essentially doubling his shield skill proficiency gain. To make things even better, the efficiency boost quadrupled if Ryan was wearing the full plate armor known as the Iron Wall Knight set during practice. He added that wearing a specific necklace increased the multiplier 8 times further. Evan quickly instructed him not to over-analyze the math, but just to focus on getting a feel for the exercise. The shield, armor, and necklace were all glitched or distorted by some kind of strange, unidentified interference, like bad code. When he was urged to try it out, initially, Ryan just looked completely bewildered. Then, in a sudden burst of energy, he roared and charged forward, deflecting the incoming blows with his shield. even observed Ryan's quick adaptation, but also noticed blood seeping from his side, so he shouted for Ryan to heal himself while continuing the battle. Ryan chanted to the battle god, and golden light enveloped him, quickly stitching his injuries close. Despite the hits, Ryan held his position firmly as the green aura emanating from his shield grew visibly more intense, even advanced relentlessly, his own form wrapped in swirling power. Meanwhile, the necklace, which was supposed to drain the user's mana to summon endless wind arrows, instead, it launched those exact arrows directly at Ryan. Oddly enough, it used hardly any mana and seemed to be a growth fight item, meaning it would strengthen alongside its user. The armor was equally bizarre, plagued by a bizarre coding error. As a shield rather than standard armor, it had been stored away instead of being discarded as trash. Wearing it alone meant damage would leak through. However, if the user adopted a braced stance as if holding a shield, it started acting exactly like one. When paired with an actual shield, it created the effect of having two shields raised simultaneously, doubling the overall block potential. Combined with the echo shield effect, these items magnified the training efficiency significantly. This setup effectively blocked the summoned arrows, creating the ideal training regimen specifically for shield-based combat arts. Even seemed satisfied with the progress, stepping back to let Ryan continue training solo. He then turned toward Shine, announcing that it was now time for his proper instruction to begin. Shine quickly understood that this session would be far more intense than ordinary dagger drills. Even reminded him that after 2 years of experience, he had already become sharp enough to fight knights head on. Shine snapped back, emphasizing that those particular battles were not voluntary engagements, as the knights had ambushed him from behind while he was practicing alone. Despite the hardship, he then declared, it magnificently sharpened his godly vision and enhanced combat instincts. Shine, meanwhile, grumbled quietly about the butler's own ridiculously transcendent peepers. Our young lord confessed that his initial, humble goal was merely to ensure his friends survived those treacherous dungeons. Now, however, they had bulked up enough to confidently stride into such a perilous place. Shine, however, was acutely aware he still hadn't quite attained the power level he truly required for such endeavors. Workout. Shine sheepishly conceded his muscles still hadn't caught up to his ambitions. He agreed. That, he quipped, was simply the arduous reality of being a demigod. Our boy, with a theatrical flourish, then unsheathed one of his twin blades. He then elaborated on a rather dramatic skill, learned directly from his blades, which he dubbed Bloody Shadow. It works like this, he clarified. The more blood that slicks onto his daggers, the quicker his movements become, even magically restoring his stamina. Even remarked that this gory, yet effective, ability seemed perfectly suited for someone whose specialty involved tackling multiple opponents simultaneously. He also pointed out it was one of those advantageous techniques that naturally refined itself with practical experience, only growing mightier and more potent as time marched on. Our protagonist, quite stubbornly, insisted it would only truly bloom amidst genuine combat, but the alchemist, ever the practical sort, swiftly countered, suggesting he simply needed to get some blood onto the blades. No biggie. Shine, ever the warrior, immediately wondered if this was a polite instruction to start, well, dispatching people. He then, thankfully, rapidly cleared up that ghastly misconception, then promptly unveiled several handy bottles, each brimming with a mysterious red liquid. In that exact instant, the boy, perhaps a little too eagerly, questioned if the contents of those bottles were indeed genuine blood. Ivan, confirming his suspicions, explained it was merely monster blood, primarily sourced from a rather abundant goblin population, with each distinct bottle containing contributions from various other fantastical creatures. While Bloody Shadow certainly amplified physical capabilities, it also placed considerable stress on the body, rendering it quite perilous for a young child to attempt mastering during training sessions. Initially, Ivan had intended for Shine to first accumulate a good deal of practical dungeon experience. However, he now firmly believed the young demigod had developed far more strength than he had ever anticipated. The young hero readily concurred, attributing his newfound ability to train the skill faster than predicted to some particularly helpful local facilities that magically replenished stamina. Ivan then elaborated further on the matter. He explained that effective training wasn't solely about the sheer volume of blood coating the blades, but rather the number of distinct blood types applied within a defined period, coupled with the amount of rigorous movement performed during that same interval. This revelation caused Shine to immediately grasp the peculiar reason for preparing such a vast assortment of different blood types. Our young master then precisely instructed him on the meticulous order in which to coat his daggers, like a bizarre ritual. He elaborated, explaining that the absolute most efficient training approach involved a vigorous 100-meter sprint, back and forth, immediately following each individual blood application. Shine simply froze, utterly flabbergasted. He then sheepishly admitted his primary worry was being tragically mistaken for some sort of dangerous, blood-drenched menace. Even then mischievously asked if he preferred clinging to his existing, less effective training, and when confronted with that daunting choice, Shine promptly panicked before rapidly consenting to the innovative, if messy, new method. Meanwhile, our hero's thoughts drifted directly to the mysterious Blue. She consistently departed right after completing her duties. Her stock explanation for these swift exits was always a dedication to her rather peculiar lamp training, a truly baffling concept, but he couldn't shake the distinct feeling she was absolutely hiding a colossal secret. Even never inquired earlier, because he simply assumed there wasn't any foul play involved. Since they were required to enter the peerless dungeon as a pair, he suddenly felt compelled to assess her readiness and figure out exactly what was going on. After 2 hours of frantic searching in every spot a person could possibly slip away to, he returned completely empty-handed. He knew that someone truly trying to keep a secret wouldn't simply hide in an easily accessible location. A disembodied voice called his name. Madame Miriam was standing close by, prattling lists and accompanied by a small entourage of personal maids. She observed Ethan's chaotic dashing about and wanted to know what he sought, so he offered a polite salutation while she paused expectantly for his explanation. He quickly offered apologies for his current state of business, and then inquired whether she had recently encountered Belial. He shared that he had pressing matters to discuss with the young woman, yet she was nowhere to be found on the estate. The lady expressed astonishment and asked if he was really unaware that Redine had been instructing Belial in sophisticated tea services, artistic flower arrangements, and noble conduct. Ivan recoiled in shock, demanding to know the reason his mother would potentially train the girl in such subjects. Miriam responded by explaining that she was being taught because his mother saw her as a suitable future mistress, and was preparing her for that role. He yelled in utter disbelief, vehemently arguing that he hadn't even found a wife yet and pointing out the girl was barely 9 years old. Miriam countered by observing that it would be terribly inappropriate to make a household maid into a mistress. The proposition was utterly absurd, especially since he categorically rejected the very notion of accepting the girl, whom he internally labeled as the blood-aid witch, as a mistress. He then paused for reflection, realizing 3 full years had passed since he last shared tea with his mother. He suddenly recognized that Belua's capabilities were advancing at an unusually accelerated pace. He pondered if perhaps a unique skill was emerging from her training with his mother, mirroring the way that butler and headmaid acquired their respective talents. He understood that in this world, consistent training often crystallized into a distinct skill after months, leading eventually to full mastery. Belua's potential mana abilities had grown significantly, and surprisingly, while she was diligently enduring the tedious lessons on noble etiquette. He swiftly dismissed this idea with significant skepticism. He made a direct path to the door, giving it a solid rap while clearly stating his name. His mother emerged from inside, with the girl positioned timidly directly behind her. Even looked straight at Radine and questioned why she had kept her magical abilities secret for so long. She returned his gaze, admitting that he had managed to figure out the situation. Facing his mother, Even insisted on knowing why she had kept her abilities secret, and inquired whether his father knew. Radine acknowledged that she wasn't entirely sure if he knew, but suspected he had probably figured it out. She mentioned that the Sherdam lineage was notoriously deficient in magical aptitude, but then added that Arit, conversely, had demonstrated remarkable talent in the field. The protagonist, in turn, offered to respond to the previous inquiries by detailing 4 specific reasons. His first clue was the ephemeral properties of the tea that she and Boliwa had consumed. The second piece of evidence was the notebook next to the teacups, which was a magical artifact meant to encrypt any text written within it. Item number 3, an ancient lamp, refusing to quit, which stubbornly casts a dim, spectral glow even once it has been turned off. Collectively, these details firmly establish she had been utilizing the object, quite literally moments before his rather inconvenient appearance. For the fourth point, Billy was astounding. Quick advancement simply could not have stemmed solely from what one might call lamp training, which means his mother herself had been meticulously instructing her, perhaps in clandestine lessons. Redding shrewdly notes his impressive talent for assessing how other people are developing, and, rather shrewdly, he points out the young fellow possesses a collection of his own intriguing mysteries. He then appends a critical observation. His father shows clear signs of aging, while she, remarkably, remains utterly ageless. In that precise instant, she purposefully advances, and rather sternly commands him to lend her his undivided, close attention. She forcefully states her youthful appearance remains a carefully cultivated illusion, ensuring he apprehends the pivotal fact. After he responds affirmatively, she promptly queries whether he possesses any information regarding actual witches. He vaguely recollects that people often refer to them simply as women who wield formidable magical power, and, With palpable relief, she states she is rather pleased he isn't more clued in. Our protagonist attentively absorbs Redding's detailed elucidation on the true essence of witches, suddenly grasping that she signifies a clandestine, concealed species, entirely distinct from a mere occupational choice. She portrays them as distinct female part, humans whose incredible skills are passed down exclusively through their genetic lineage, gifted with copious mana. They also wield utterly exceptional command. She mentions an ancient tale, alleging a divine entity crafted them, then discreetly secreted them among mortals, specifically to ensure global safety. Despite her admission of limited knowledge past that, the young man processes this by mentally equating these beings to powerful, semi-divine figures. Redding notes the woman traversed the world, artfully hiding her true nature, right until she discovered romance with his father. Subsequent to their nuptials, she completely ceased her active participation in global matters, and deliberately opted for a quiet existence as an entirely ordinary individual known as Redding D. Sheetan. Within his mind, even recollected having thoroughly explored every single Demon War series title and all its downloadable expansions from his prior life. While possessing an impressive grasp of nearly all details, he never truly comprehended the complete narrative. Given his non-developer status, he noticed that the game's series never once disclosed any mention of witches being true to me, humans. He ponders how such fundamentally vital knowledge managed to entirely vanish, and a singular, probable solution reveals itself. The forthcoming sequel, that single detail completely elucidates every mystery, for unless the entire planet Earth suffered absolute destruction, it was utterly commonplace for a fresh installment in the gaming series to be unveiled. Nevertheless, he absolutely never once contemplated physically manifesting inside its virtual reality. Redyne then elaborated, clarifying that no additional witch progeny materialized from the union between herself and his father. She candidly acknowledged Ivan carries a diluted trace of witch ancestry, primarily because he decidedly isn't a female. She thinks this detrimental consequence is his total inability to perform magic. She then remembers finding Bayu, a young person showing great potential to eventually develop into a formidable witch. Our main man realizes Boluo possesses divine genes, pondering if hybrids, hags, and deities share some wacky family tree. He expects her to gain magical powers that were absent from the third demonic brawl. Redyne concludes this clarifies their predicament, asking if such a lengthy history lesson satisfied the boy, and the boy offers a tiny sympathetic nod. She applauds his sharp intellect while requesting personal enigmas, mentioning that withholding data is quite unsportsmanlike currently. He suspects a fifth hellish conflict looms ahead, though he lacks the guidebook for that particular disaster. Spilling the beans to his dear mother seems wise, given her suspiciously strong links to the upcoming franchise installment. He plots his future carefully, trying not to trigger any fatal plot twists, and this hero begins explaining while recalling a vision from his sleep, walking the estate. Even listens to the staff gossiping about him like nosy neighbors. The staff gossips about his weird habits and crazy train drills, until the boy finally confronts Shine amidst the blooming petals. Shine attempts another comedy routine involving the plant guy, almost breaking the young master's stony facade with laughter. The boss labels this survival scheme number 5, a goal to mask his feelings everywhere. Despite his lack of actual rehearsal, just several summaries prior to today, the girl remarked how his infrequent grins provide massive satisfaction for anyone nearby. Yet the boy fumbled his steps, then destroyed a ceramic mug, drenching everything in leaf water before the maid sprinted over. Right then, a vital detail hit his brain. His big 12th party and official debut were coming like a runaway train. He confesses that flashing his pearly whites at every passerby would basically be an invitation for the Grim Reaper. The master rejects Shine's idea of quitting his daily workouts, observing that a young noble hitting this milestone is serious business, and entirely devoid of comedy. The servant remembers Eric's ridiculously fancy gala, which was packed with exotic elites and high-ranking trade bosses. Our main guy observes that these shindigs attract many ladies, a fact he considers a recipe for total disaster. He maintains an expressionless mug is the only way to dodge annoying drama and lady-related headaches. The servant scoffs at such terror, proposing females are simply friendly acquaintances, much like the pair Mabel and Belleu. But the boy ignores that logic. Just as Belleu arrives carrying a fancy envelope from the royal court, he turns into a statue while scanning the parchment, yelling in shock about getting mail from the actual king. The maiden mentions the Marquis checked the wax before her arrival, praying the sender isn't someone he dreads. He begs her for some comforting news, but she admits she has no hope to offer him today. Furthermore, that specific correspondence confirms His Highness shall crash the festivities, making the Duke howl like a banshee about ignored offers. Mon cautions the lad against being cocky, claiming the middle child possesses unique talent. However, The old man argues the ruler shall fail because Ivan intends to reveal his basement warrior leader during the cake ceremony. Shine exhibits total shock, yet the small leader maintains that mayhem is exactly what he intended. The lad suspects the sovereign's hidden agenda involves trapping him in a wedding to some royal lady. Our hero assumes that accepting the warrior post shall permanently sabotage every opportunity for that annoying engagement, promising to pulverize this obvious omen of doom. Deep within that manor, employees hustle frantically while the kid grills Mabel regarding those various celebration logistics. She clarifies that the whole schedule needs a revamp because the monarch decided to invite himself. The boy recommends diverting every eye elsewhere to avoid the regal intruder. Yet she demands the birthday child remains the central star regardless of the fancy guest. She passes over the chaotic layout document while he investigates the details and questions its validity. Additionally, Mabel provides a solemn nod. This causes the boy's face to glow upon discovering a swarm of pretty maidens are visiting his blowout. Beforehand, Ivan interrogated the selection of famous lay singers booked for the big event. Mabel smirks, noting these women are actually just gold diggers seeking rich noblemen. She describes how promising a brief encounter and assigned foes secured their attendance instantly. The lead hero scowls with irritation, blaming Mabel for pimping him out without asking first. He tallies up more fatal portents, while highlighting numerous flaws in the layout. Despite the ladies whining about him meddling in his own shindig, the lad orders Mabel to make certain the band performs several chill melodies. The boy retreats once royalty enters, proposing to bisect the gala into two different segments, a formal bit for the monarch and a fun part for everyone else, allowing the VIPs to leave early. Eventually, the youngster stands before the workers to ask every person to attend his bash. The lad promises that the primary hall and secondary spots shall remain available. Some staff hesitate, fearing they might spoil the high society vibe. However, he disagrees, ordering the staff to sport brothers' pharmacy gear so their rank is visible. Hannah feels quite unsure about the dress code, though he insists it is vital with so many pretentious snobs wandering around the place. Ivan mentions the lady is forced into stiff religious gear for the ceremony. He offers to craft a beautiful gown once the elite snubs finally leave. Facing the elder, he suggests a dapper suit, but the old fellow refuses, fearing royal eyes. However, the protagonist baits him by describing the massive fleet of gorgeous ladies. The elder doubts their attractiveness, but the kid swears they are pure smoke shows. He mentions those silk-lined hotties are renowned throughout various foreign lands. The grandfather relents, though he threatens to bolt if anyone dares disturb his peace. Later, our hero meets the local meatman. He requests his services, but the man faints thinking about feeding a noble horde. The cook smashes his palms down, scolding the young lord for such nonsense. He even argues only experts use that specific herb, begging him to flaunt those culinary skills tonight. He guarantees the picky blue bloods will enjoy every single bite of food. This speech finally sways the anxious chef. Even describes the magic of fire-kissed meats, prompting a vow of excellence, while the young master manages every other boring task. Within the grounds, Shine appears hauling a stack of packages, mentioning they belong to the master. He even acknowledges the delivery, having bought fresh gear for his squad of trainees. He insists that donning these matching outfits for the gala is strictly required. Shine pauses with suspicion, wondering if they are being singled out today. The boy confirms those youngsters are his pupils, destined for his upcoming midnight battalion. Externally, staff members shriek for speed because the remaining minutes are disappearing fast. A guard swears the defenses are tight, but Bollywood demands perfection because the king is visiting. He questions if the temporary kitchen staff were vetted for hidden daggers. Mabel yells for him to go fix his face, vowing she has everything handled. One guest notices the gorgeous girls, while another puzzles over their invitations. An observer remarks that the young lord surrounds himself with top talent. Hannah questions whether their attendance at this function is truly acceptable. The man explains nobody would mess with the boy's shop during a marquis-level blowout. That lady inquires whether his ancestors were wealthy titled nobles, plus the boy cautions that faking status brings misery more painful than burial. The young man suggests she guard her tongue before requesting beverages. Hidden away, while dressing, Mabel giggles that guests are singing his praises. Yet Shine observes the lethal pit remains the primary conversation, which causes Ivan to wonder about the ongoing gossip. The soldier mentions that 0 parties have survived beyond level 45 since everything became weird, despite past explorers reaching deeper. Mabel timidly questions if he truly intends to depart after partying, plus our hero boldly agrees, admitting he intends to dive in yet merely conquer 5 small stories, making them completely speechless. Shine worries that if our young hero challenges the boss, his father might actually perish from fright. Even confesses that he initially planned to reach the 10th level. The servant clarifies that bosses protect every 5 stories, mentioning 0 per. Teens have ever smacked the level 5 guardian. Should his father learn about the 10th level objective, A total grounding followed. Hence the boy stops at that 5th story using those armored soldiers plus the assistance of his new second in command. The fellow blinks, wondering exactly which unlucky soul got that specific title. Our hero states that mentorship duties now fall upon his shoulders as vice captain, while Shine hopes it is a prank. Then the chief maid pops in saying the outfit is ready, earning a polite nod from our hero. Prior to departing, he requests the servant zip her lips regarding their chat, which she happily accepts. Whereas the boy says it is time to face the guests in the ballroom. Within the chamber, a guest spots the arrival of the Furity clan. That veteran compliments the pale-haired girl, leading Hannah to mention that she is Alicia of the Furity household. That guy hunts for Beluo, while speculating whether Alicia will walk inside with Ivan. Meanwhile the poor girl looks quite green and nauseous. The parent promises an introduction soon, begging his daughter to keep her composure, and snacks down. Pro speculates on how much the boy has truly improved, smirking, because the lad has finally become a legitimate opponent for him. Alicia whispers that he is a big fat liar, though he swears his pants are not on fire. Suddenly, the great Lord Sheridan and his lovely spouse appear. One guest asks about the second lady, whereas a bystander assumes she is currently nursing the fresh baby. The fancy marquis struts forward, thanking the crowd for not ditching his expensive party. Standing tall, he blabbers to the fancy folks about that ancient era when his eldest finally hit 12. Now the old man declares it is time to party for his second kid's puberty milestone, setting the stage for Van. Behind the curtains, Beluo sprints inside like her hair is on fire, clutching some spicy news from the entrance, making the little lord look quite bamboozled. Over that way, everyone snaps their necks toward the rear as a shiny gold stick thumps the ground with some serious attitude. His Royal Highness marches inside, while Princess Serena trails him like a very elegant shadow. He showed up too early, just as Ivan sees the king. Within the ballroom, the ruler glides forward surrounded by Tinkin bodyguards, with the princess strolling right behind them. The host waddles over to ask why the heck he is so early. He mentions the shindig has not even kicked off yet, so the big boss simply nods and joins the fun anyway, with the host acting like a fancy tour guide, walking right next to the Golden Crown. Near the platform, the Marquis yells loud enough to wake the dead, grabbing everyone's wandering focus. He lunges forward with open arms, basically tackling his kid with birthday wishes for his 12th year on Earth. Even says thanks and promises to not ruin the family reputation, vowing to help the peasants with all his might. However, the dad gives him the stink eye, and demands to know exactly how his boy plans to be useful. The kid stops for a second, before announcing he is starting a monster hunting club, naming himself the boss of the Say's defense. A few fossils remember that group was fired ages ago, while some folks wonder why a toddler is in charge, leading to the giant boss waving a palm to demand some silence. He demands to know why the boy picked this path, whether the spotlight got to his head, or if he is just being a total hothead. The dad jumps in to clarify his spawn's not ditching, he just chose the pit. The host demands a confirmation, which he does with a big nod, telling the king he is ready to be the basement boss, noting he already recruited Shine, plus Rian, and Beluo. Rumors twirl that the kid should probably wait until he is a legal adult before fighting scary beasts. Our main hero insists he will show his grit by diving into the pit with his band of merry misfits. He finishes by saying he will return with the decapitated noggin of the level 5 boss just for the fun. Right then, our old man suffers a complete meltdown, screaming about how his boy lacks maturity for any captaincy role. The lad nods, claiming he must earn some street cred and show everyone he is actually serious about this crazy plan. Suddenly, the father gets questioned about his recruitment drive, as people eyes Shine, beyond, and Beluo standing there like stone statues. The captain walks out and promises the kid is the real deal. Observers present identify that Iron Wall Commander Michael Erlock as the one supporting those 3 little trainees. That commander claims these kids practiced for eternity, boasting they possess more power than many veteran warriors, and trade blows beside the more experienced fighters, telling that group they have enough guts plus glory for conquering those 5 deep dungeon levels. From the far wall, the dad has a meltdown, shouting that no sane leader would allow their kid to enter a death trap. The captain suggests a quick scrap against the veterans to show their talent, letting the father make the final call. The monarch, looking amused, tells the lad to show off his fancy tricks right now. The boy agrees, and soon both squads are staring each other down like hungry dogs in the middle. Inside the massive room, the captain explains the regulations, letting sharp blades and sparkly sorcery be used in this playground scuffle. The commander lifts an arm, gives a nod, and yells for the mayhem to commence. The referee starts the brawl featuring the veteran soldiers against a squad containing Shine, plus Rian, screaming how sorcery is legal before mayhem starts. Professional soldiers dash ahead as the small squad gets ready for a really painful collision. The big guy braces himself while activating a fancy magical protection spell. Enemy weapons start dancing wildly until he shoves them away, making two of the grown men trip over their boots. Shine moves like a caffeinated ninja, cutting through the air, before the other guy can even blink his eyes. Even if a soldier prepares to strike, his boots get stuck in ice while Balua starts cooking up a massive flame orb which she chucks. This forced the commentator to intervene, shouting for everyone to quit. As he ended the scuffle right then, the official shouts that Ryan and his buddies are the ultimate victors. Some fellow notices the heavy buckler, mentioning how a meat shield of that quality helps in every messy fight. That observer admits the remaining two kids are surprisingly talented as well. The monarch halts everything, asking if the shirt and bloodline keep such tiny monsters tucked away for special occasions. The noble frozenly watches, sweating as he realizes the sheer power of those kids. His Majesty decides Ivan is a genius boss for assembling that trio into such a spicy group of misfits. That guy wonders if Ivan possesses any actual talent, so our lad asks the head soldier for a hand. Her Highness screams among the mob, while the kid frets that escaping would forfeit every chance of visiting the pit. Michael waltzes out, announcing that he will be the challenger. That crowd chats about this selection, mentioning how Michael can easily protect the youngster. Warrior types mumble that facing the little boss means certain doom for their souls. Additionally, Alicia stays very focused once that little scrap finally starts. Using the established rules of engagement, that small boss and Michael get into position, looking ready for a brawl. After a whistle blows, they zoom ahead. Michael lunges to bully the kid, however Van stands firm, returning a hit. However, that opponent slams the leg into his flank, after which both swap fast hits. BunRv rejects any magic item theories, swearing this comes from nothing but raw muscle. Our main man moves with buttery smoothness, landing hits that make the other guy look silly. BunRv notes that while fancy gear helps, you cannot just buy talent at a shop, you gotta train. That old guy Ferrati is stunned by such pro fighting from a kid. Then Alicia confesses her crush without any delay. Once the idea of wedding bells gets tossed around, the dame hesitates, then nods if the lad agrees, mentioning how amusing that sounds. Meanwhile, the old man vows to rig the game so the offer gets accepted. The lad stumbles, creating a massive hole in his guard. Michael rushes forward, yet a fast reaction from Ivan sends that man crashing into the dirt. Out of nowhere, a judge stops the fun, aiming Michael D. Urluka topped out of the scrat. Rian bows slightly, questioning whether that star protests this final score. Yet our lad simply accepts failure. Michael gives props for the fight, noting the boy has clearly been eating his spinach. The man suggests focusing on physical form to ensure the boy develops even quicker. Eventually, both fighters grip palms, concluding the scrap as best buddies. Out in the bleachers, a visitor feels super jelly that the boss raised crack kids. The man admits that big brother Eric is awesome, yet another gifted child is stealing the show. That old fellow bets the Sheridan house value will skyrocket because of Ivan, later asking if Crow is still a match. Crow tenses up, confessing the squirt has progressed massively since they previously met, feeling like he might be eating the kid's dust. Mid-rune, Michael faces the masses, and proclaims Ivan's showmanship is definitive evidence of his prowess. The monarch groans, while the Marquis notes he shouldn't bother picking such a grueling lie. After a brief lull, he yields by dictating a cap where Ivan only explores level 5. Mentioning that level 6 is basically suicide. Ivan swears to conquer the floor, and trot back completely unscathed, though he secretly schemes that this is merely a start, intending to hit floor 10, when he ages again. Faraday hoists a drink, telling him to ditch the brainy stuff and party for his 12th year, which he permits. But Dane grabs the beverage, strictly forbidding any liquid courage. Serena arrives with a smirk, claiming she is here to honor their previous pact. Ivan turns to stone when she pops up, mostly because she brags his coaching made her a total tank. Serena mentions her massive urge to join his fellowship of dungeon knights. Alicia wanders over, casually mentioning how ironic it is since she also wants an invitation. He even screams in total shock at her as well. Realizing those two lethal omens he hoped were dead have actually been resurrected, Shine strolls by, mentioning that the king, the Marquis, Count Faraday, and the rest of the elites ditch the party to gossip. Even tells the audience they are rearranging the furniture to fix the atmosphere. The youth summons some pretty musicians to perform, sparking the band's melodic demonstration. Meanwhile, Hannah begs Rian for a whirl on the floor, and he complies. Serena dashes back, irritated that she lost time by swapping her wardrobe. Our hero tells her she has to wait for the next tune. Serena suddenly blurts out that she intends to dance exclusively with Ivan, lacking any patience. She clutches his palm and drags him away. Ivan twirls with Serena, who keeps teasing him about how many girls want his attention. She admits she never suspected another fancy girl would care about his monster-slaying club. He notes Alicia hails from the Magic Kingdom's dungeon town, confirming he only saw her once before. That girl disregarded his silly worries, raves about his rhythm, then eagerly begs for another round of footwork, hardly before his rejection started. The nearby crowd bursts into massive shouting, which grabs his focus. The local meat merchant brings out kebabs, and people recognize them as those famous BunRv skewers. While some gossips wonder if the Sheridan house actually hired the staff, these skewers sparked quite a bit of worry, given that they looked like they came from a monster, and might be quite poisonous. Even sported a smug expression as Serena devoured a piece, instantly proclaiming it incredibly tasty. The princess gave the skewers a good stare before taking a big bite, then started hollering about the amazing flavor, while demanding Yvonne install this delicacy in her castle kitchen. Yvonne informed her that the main ingredient was monster flesh, causing her to freeze in place and question the morality of her snack choice. Nevertheless, he quickly alleviated her fears, assuring her the Marquis family's guarantee meant it was perfectly safe to eat. The surrounding aristocrats began to purchase several skewers at once, and even the regular townsfolk joined the rapidly growing queue. The chef signaled to Yvonne, confirming the venture was a major triumph, precisely mirroring the young master's forecast. With a knowing smirk, he mentally summarized the situation, concluding that quality ingredients trumped ethics in the face of great flavor. Someone shouted from his blind spot, and when he spun around, he instantly knew the man was Jinian from the Thunderbird Guild. The guildmaster observed that it was truly unusual for someone who wasn't a dungeon explorer to savor monster meat, complimenting Yvonne on his unconventional tastes. Yvonne recalled that this man led a rather exclusive and small group of explorers. Jinian quickly countered that they simply had fewer members, a point Yvonne dismissed with a wave of his hand. He continued by mentioning their group was only famous among certain professionals, with most outsiders remaining completely ignorant of its existence. The protagonist swiftly cut off the conversation by ordering 2 more skewers, clearly indicating he had zero interest in being recruited. Jinian kept pushing, swearing he wouldn't turn Rayana over to anyone, though Yvonne just ate his food, completely unconcerned by the warning. Jinian cautioned that one person couldn't manage so many talented companions all alone, before suddenly departing in the middle of his own sentence. Ruby approached and gently highlighted the sharp manner in which Yvonne had dismissed the guild master. A girl with flaming red hair soon arrived, accompanied by a man who presented himself as Alan. This was the leader of Wandering Paradise, who explained she would have offered her greeting much earlier if she had realized he was working in their domain. He recalled this group's reputation for unwavering devotion, and their commitment to defending Dungeon City against any and all attackers. Al-Havan Sur from the Phoenix Guild made an entrance, bringing along Mira, the vice leader of Heartshield. She explained that their master was feeling under the weather and stayed home. Yvonne, meanwhile, remembered Aloha as the Ice Witch, a former ally of Heartshield's tanks. Vlad von Solta from Evergreen and Saline Annis from Megaman then both advanced in sequential order. Daisy tilted her head and asked about his fighting skills. Even explained that Knight Captain Michael once gained a dungeon blessing, learned the technique, and then taught him. She probed further, asking if he genuinely only used techniques to fight monsters, warning that this was extremely dangerous. He confessed that fighting ability didn't truly help inside the dungeon. He insisted he only employed techniques defensively, while searching for new ways to aid the Night Order, which he was preparing to test out during missions. Alan commented on the thoroughness of his research efforts. Aloha locked eyes with him and questioned if his ultimate goal was to completely clear the entire dungeon. He confidently stated that the dungeon's Night Order area existed solely to act as a shield for the city, noting that its purpose was straightforward and needed no further clarification. He continued, stating that exploring specific areas to increase their strength and protect the citizens was more than enough justification. Daisy's eyes widened in surprise at his distinct lack of ambition, as he casually rejected the notion of reaching the dungeon's ultimate conclusion. He declared flatly that sacrificing your existence for a mission seemed like a terrible bargain. A nearby guy laughed and pointed out that at least the main character had a healthy respect for staying alive. A cloaked individual emerged from the throng, pulling back the hood to show Prince Damien, making Yvonne shout the name in sheer disbelief. Yvonne let out a sigh of relief as a young man stepped forward. The prince noted that he even at least seemed to know how to properly appreciate his own existence. The onlookers immediately identified him as Prince Damien, silk-lying. Yvonne offered a respectful greeting, insisting he felt honored by the meeting. Damien retorted that Yvonne did not seem especially honored, explaining he had arrived purely to give a command. The prince instructed Yvonne to protect his little sister, suggesting he transfer all that self-preservation energy toward her safety. Yvonne raised his hand, promptly rejecting the royal decree. The prince asked how Yvonne could dismiss him so casually, demanding to know if he truly disliked Serena. Yvonne countered that this was hardly the appropriate venue for discussing his romantic preferences. He then stated his intention to become the official captain of the Dungeon Knight Order. He elaborated that the captain's wife must live restricted to the dungeon city, and only someone with that resolve can marry him. He finished by stating that marrying a princess would prove incredibly complicated due to those restrictions. Without hesitation, Serena announced her full intention to join the Dungeon Knight Order with him. Damien immediately suspected Ivan had put the notion in her head, but Ivan promptly denied any involvement. The prince unsheathed his sword and ordered Ivan into a duel. He announced that if Ivan lost, he would be forced to marry Serena. Ivan protested loudly, but Damien remained firm. He reminded Ivan that he couldn't possibly reject a direct royal command a second time. The blade shimmered brightly in his grasp, yet it was an unsuitable weapon that significantly dampened his abilities. Ivan agreed to the challenge, but only if the prince promised never to issue him requests again should Ivan emerge victorious. Damien accepted the terms and commanded a nearby guard to offer Ivan a weapon, but the offer was promptly declined. Instead, Ivan opted to utilize his martial art, Heaven's Weight, a style specifically developed to withstand the claws and fangs of dungeon beasts, choosing to fight barehanded. The prince, meanwhile, was fully intent on teaching Ivan a lesson in humility. The duel officially commenced, with the two opponents facing off, one armed with steel, and the other with nothing. Damien shouted out Ivan's name and rushed into the fray. Ivan landed a single punch, sending the prince tumbling to the dirt completely unconscious. The match concluded almost immediately. Ivan pondered how a single punch had ended the match, wondering if an unsuitable weapon really weakened a fighter that substantially. Michael stepped forward and explained that the lingering heavy aura from the punch likely caused an internal injury due to a specific trait of Heaven's Weight. Ivan swears he merely tickled the lad with his blade. Michael admits the boy has some seriously spicy combat moves. Although the eldest royal brat looks about as sturdy as a wet noodle, the winner saunters over to Damien, mentioning that sharp iron really dislikes his vibe. He recommends a heavy mallet, since smashing things requires less elegance. The royal wonders why a long pointy stick is off the table, so Ivan explains that choosing a mismatched tool is like wearing tiny shoes. It only leads to immense suffering. Damien pauses, hearing how a blade is just a metal paperweight without proper hands. The noble heir ponders this very quietly, then nods about thinking it over, before skedaddling away quickly. In the meantime, Serena demands to follow the lad like glue, a request he begrudgingly accepts. She begs for another bougie, yet he says absolutely not, claiming his feet have suffered enough. Alicia glides forward to claim a turn, while Serena wiggles her fingers to lock in a future bougie. Alicia notes his massive fan club, admitting it is annoying, but she ignores it now. She drops the bomb about planning to marry him specifically. During their rhythmic bougie, she proclaims her intent to join the prince in matrimony. Ivan rejects that, claiming his old man would never support such madness. But she claps back, explaining her dad is the aggressive matchmaker who was stalking them earlier just to seal the deal. He remembers the parents whispering in a corner, realizing they were likely bartering his freedom for a marriage contract. Ivan whines, claiming it is bizarre for a fellow with his low traits to be picked, yet she reveals her agreement is signed, causing him to freak out and demand some reasons. Alicia gets close, whispering that he acts like a guy who swallowed a whole encyclopedia, but he is currently shaking in his boots. The lad tells himself they have only encountered each other twice. He regrets skipping those emotionless face lessons, mentally yelling at Shine right now. Alicia mentions his terror as peak entertainment, so she plans to hover around him just to enjoy his constant sweating. He claims this specific predicament is quite hazardous, and chooses to ditch the Gala completely, wishing only to vanish like a ghost while Ivan attempts an exit. But a random lady blocks his path, requesting a quick shimmy. Shortly, a few more approach. At the start Serena, followed by Hannah, and before long the miniature horde gathers, with everyone eager for an opening. Close by, a pair of attendants witnesses the scene, with one joking about the fame while his comrade deems such charm normal for the boss. The guy encourages the lady to mingle, questioning whether he should perform the introductions for the silent girl. She barks a decline, asserting that being the first to pressure him would be far too aggressive. Shine points out today is a total exception. The maiden notes that just breathing the same air feels magical, promising to treasure each sunset from this moment forward. Out of nowhere, Shine bellows for the little master. He rotates to find that a certain girl desires his company. While a finger indicates Bellew, Shine questions how much longer he will stall, so the youth apologizes, explaining his focus had completely drifted elsewhere. While observing her, he contemplates whether she is currently harboring a secret grudge. Bowing low, he speaks to the girl, wondering if she might tolerate his presence while guiding her through the party. She begins a humble denial, claiming such a privilege is far beyond her status. The boy suggests ignoring those tiny details for the time being, as he reiterates his polite offer. directing a finger at him. She proclaims her joyful consent. The onlookers stare with absolute disbelief. A rival grumbles regarding swapping souls with the hero to capture the maiden, but his friend commands him to wake up. Belhil looks at the lad, describing him as a majestic titan around which the whole universe orbits, even while claiming to be a mere wealthy peasant from a remote province. A bit later, the Marquis chats with his progeny, and mentions that every betrothal is presently halted, which delights the kid until the patriarch quips that royalty would never surrender a girl to some soldier. His parent clarifies it involves a specific rank, specifically the captaincy, which allowed them to stay firm on their refusal. The lad deduces that the predicament involving Princess Serena is finally settled. The Marquis mentions that even if the sovereign runs out of options, he will never quit, so stay alert. While the boy silently prays for a superior suitor to rescue the royalty, the patriarch changes the topic, noting that while general trends appear positive, Lord Ferrati's girl has finally made up her mind. The kid pays attention as his old man details the count's desire to shove his daughter into the unit as an apprentice. This revelation causes the boy to let out a frustrated shriek. The patriarch adds that enduring the hardship could eventually earn her a permanent spot, meaning there is zero chance for flight anymore. The man notes how the urban defense forces are expanding rapidly, while referencing the stylish attire utilized to recruit the youngsters for backup duties. The patriarch taunts his offspring, asking if he intends to desert the group after reaching this point. Then his vibe shifts as he claims the moment for revealing the actual truth has arrived, specifically inquiring how come the youngster feels such immense terror regarding females. Following a brief silence, the youngster confesses his dread of unmanageable companions, fearing secret agendas might wound him, then wonders if such a cautious mindset makes him a total dunce. The father rejects that notion, stating the youth lacks stupidity, but simply possesses a psyche far beyond his current years. That noble cautions how hiding from humanity is no solution, mentioning how even failing helps him improve, while acknowledging the boy's bizarrely paranoid objectives. That noble clarifies how genuine wisdom stones solely through getting hands dirty, noting how even colossal blunders constitute education. The father pushes the youngster to deeply contemplate his own nature and peers, utilizing every single result for betterment. Protagonist concurs. The boy confesses his primary goal involves dodging dames for avoiding those lethal disasters currently etched within his mind. Eventually the boss offers cheers for his 12th trip around the sun. Our protagonist scans that pile of gear stacked in front of his face. The boy checks crates filled with sapphire, top to bruise, deciding he finally has enough liquid juice. Just as things wrap up, that butler trots over and wonders how come the kid remains away. The kid mentions some late night drama occurred, so he intends to hit the head immediately after this. Just before any movement occurs, a sapphire radiance starts throbbing directly out of his ribcage. The lad yanks out the girl's jewelry, which is currently beaming like a lighthouse while morphing its physical structure. Suddenly, the entrance flies wide while the royal daughter charges inside like a caffeinated rhino. Although the youth remembers the stern lecture his old man provided during the prior afternoon, standing within his private quarters, the girl shouts how a tiny newcomer will soon enter the world. The girl shouts dibs while moving in, demanding that the little creature is prepared for its magical arrival. Our hero stares toward the shimmering jewelry held within his palm, finally grasping the gravity surrounding this magical event. The princess, gripping the crimson jelly gum, mentions the stone eavesdropped on some gossip regarding the upcoming guest. The youth demands she stop crashing his room, which she accepts, although her attention remains totally glued to the ritual. Our hero directs his entire gaze upon that trinket, while a blinding flash erupts out of the charm, initiating such mystical processes. Arcane power swirls, creating a tiny cerulean blob which transforms into a very chilly jelly monster. The youth remarks how the small creature arrived strictly through its personal volition, while the princess reaches forth her open palms for welcoming the gooey guest. This petite beast flops within the lady's palms. The girl offers gratitude for its birth, dubs it Lucy, then sets it near Rubai. Once dawn arrives, the lad encounters Bernard. He displays a platter of scarlet spheres, calling those angry marbles his battle beads. The blacksmith looks absolutely thunderstruck. He even argues that because those mittens ruin normal gear, making a typical sword is a total waste. These marbles pack a serious punch, especially with the extra magic juice provided by the gauntlets. This setup ensures distance and safety, plus scientific magic will steadily beef them up, which is wonderful for his awkward combat style. Bernard insists he lean on these toys if the heat really turns up. Beyond the door, the rest of the gang lingers until they finally hit the road. The youth catches a glimpse of his dad nearby and waves. The patriarch is flabbergasted the kid is hitting the dungeon so fast, questioning his mental health. Our hero swears he is ready. While the patriarch stalls, the matriarch screams out some encouragement. After a short quiet moment, the father folds and warns Ethan to stay safe. which the boy accepts. He pivots to look at the group. The boy notices Ryan plus Belua and Shine are all standing ready.